let's see. After our first short 5-minute break, which we built in at the top of each hour. In addition, Mac Booker and Ron Gatos are our tech gurus today. They'll be admitting folks, monitoring the chat, and making sure the candidate speaking is spotlighted on your screen. And most importantly, they've been empowered with the mute button. We got 39 candidates. All candidates have been informed they have 3 minutes to present their case. After 3 minutes, they will hear the following sound, Mac. Or they will be warned they have 30 seconds. And then at the end, you'll hear a sound, which means your 3 minutes are up.
I will say 30.
Pardon me?
I will say the word 30 at 30 seconds.
Okay, Mac will say the word 30. When you're done with your 3 minutes, you'll hear a sound. It's an egg timer. Then we'll proceed to the 2 minutes of follow-up questions that will be asked by Jane or I. After the second time, after that time is up, the next candidate will be introduced. Jane and I want to make sure everyone's heard, and we can only make that happen if candidates cooperate and don't go over time. In your email, participants today, in your email invite, you were provided a candidate evaluation worksheet that you could print if you like, and a link to all the online candidate questionnaires that were filled out by candidates for the 14th Ward Democratic Committee. Sam Hans-Greco did a great job in getting those. He's allowed us to share them with you. And some candidates who didn't speak at the 14th Ward Committee have sent us questionnaires. So if you're interested in reading those, someone will put a link in the chat, or you can find that link in your original email invite. So now let's begin. First person up to bat is Patrick Sweeney.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Karen. It's good to see so many longtime friends. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Sweeney. Some of you might remember me because I used to be the vice chair of the Allegheny County Democratic Committee, and I was also a longtime member of the Democratic State Committee. I was elected 5 times to that position. 3 of those times I was in a district that included the 14th Ward, and I was consistently endorsed by this club when I would run for that position. So I thank you for that prior support. I hope to get some consideration today as well. Aside from the political aspect of my history with some of you, a lot of you probably don't know my background. I'll run through that quickly. I'm originally from the north side of the city of Pittsburgh, from Brighton Heights. My dad got a job at IUP, so the family moved up to Indiana, Pennsylvania. That's where I went to high school, proud Indiana High graduate. But I was always more of a city person. So I came to Pitt as an undergrad. I went to Pitt Law School. My first job out of law school was working for Congressman Mike Doyle when I was waiting my bar results. And I found out I passed, and I had an option of either working for him and making hardly any money, or striking out and trying to make a career as a lawyer in a very difficult legal market. I worked briefly in Brookville, Pennsylvania, which is 1 county north of Indiana, for an attorney up there named Joe Buckley. It was a great experience, but it only lasted about 6 months. I was the 3rd lawyer in a 2-person practice. I learned a lot, but there wasn't really much of a future there. I got an offer to work for the public defender's office back here in Pittsburgh. I think a lot of that had to do with somebody I used to intern with, former Senator Mike DeWita, who was the county commissioner at the time. And he connected me with Kevin Sasanowski, who was the public defender. And I've been there ever since. I am basically a career public defender. I've been with the office for 23 years. It is actually a very varied practice, what I've been able to do. I've appeared in front of all 4 divisions of the Court of Common Pleas. I would argue mental health commitment appeals in orphans court. PFA violations used to be heard by civil judges. Those were civil contempt hearings. Of course, our family division is where the juvenile court division argues its cases. I was assigned to that earlier in my career, dealing with juvenile delinquency issues. Of course, also many of my clients had simultaneous dependency issues. I have argued everything from shoplifting to homicide. I've argued dozens of jury trials, hundreds of non-jury trials. I've represented thousands of clients. There's no better preparation for the job that I'm doing than the one that I have been doing for the last 23 years. There's no better preparation for the job that I'm seeking, I should say, which is that of a trial judge. I'm a trial attorney, And that is the position we're seeking. And I'm proud to be recommended by the Bar Association. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Allegheny County Democratic
Time's up.
and the Steelworkers.
Okay, Patrick, we're going to ask this of all candidates, but you've already answered it. We're going to ask, have you applied for a rating by the bar? And if so, share your ranking. So you're recommended.
Yes.
Okay, so the question that we would like to ask you, one of the first question is, what is the most important lesson you've learned practicing law?
Probably, I would say humility, and how to treat people fairly, and try and put yourself in people's shoes. Like practicing for as long as I have, you're in front of the same people, you're dealing with the same lawyers, the same judges, a lot of the same district attorneys and police officers. You need to carry yourself in a humble way, or else it makes it extremely difficult to represent your clients. And that really is, of course, the number one consideration, is trying to do what's best for your clients. And if you do not carry yourself in a humble and respectful manner, I think it's very difficult for you personally. It's very difficult for the people you represent. And I have consistently tried to behave in a manner that is respectful and humble towards towards everyone I interact with. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've had a measure of success in my practice. So.
Okay, on a lighter note, who's your favorite Supreme Court role model and why?
Well, I'd love to say jokingly Whizzer White, because he's a former Steeler, but I would probably I'd probably say Harry Blackman, and also in part because he spoke at my law school graduation, actually at Pitt, and he was retired at that point, but he was still with it, and I definitely admired his courage and his ability to use his intellect in a way that advanced, liberty and justice throughout his career. So I would say Harry Blackman, in truth. No disrespect to Whizzer. No.
All right. How are we for time, Mac?
You have 10 seconds remaining.
Anything else you'd like to add in the 10 seconds?
Just that I forgot to mention, I am a member of the Steelworkers. I'm an elected officer in the Steelworkers, and that is something that my colleagues and my adversaries in the district attorney's office elected me to. So I think that kind of speaks volumes as to what they think of me and my.
Time's expired.
Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mark Patrick Flaherty.
He does not appear to have joined.
Okay, Mark has not joined, so we'll move to the next candidate, Beth Tarazi Sinatra.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm Beth Tarazi Sinatra. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. I did run for the Superior Court, and I did very well. Many of you did vote for me. I lost to McCaffrey by less than 30,000 votes. He is now a Superior Court judge. A little bit about me. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I started in Crafton. My parents moved us to the Quaker Valley School District because my father, as a young lawyer, was working in both Beaver County and Allegheny County. After I was a gifted athlete at Quaker Valley, upon graduation, I was recruited by the University of Pittsburgh to play women's basketball. I was one of the first women in the country, first 2,000 women in the country to gain a full athletic scholarship because of Title IX. I've been a glass ceiling and progressive person throughout my life, starting with my attending the University of Pittsburgh on a full women's basketball scholarship. Thereafter, I went to law school in the evening and I worked during the day. I clerked for Judge Standish. I had two sons. Hello? My two sons, I raised them as a single mother. I educated both of them. I paid for their education because I thought I should give that to my children. Now, when I worked for the hardest boss in the area. If any of you are lawyers, you will know my father, Louis M. Tarazi Jr. Within 3 weeks of passing the bar, I went and I was trying cases. My father would pick my kids up in the evening and send me off to Harrisburg to argue the 3 Mile Island cases or down to Texas argue cases that we were handling down there. I have one of the opinions in Ohio for the admission of expert testimony. I have done a lot of environmental type cases. I work in the civil division. Although I have practiced in the family division and the criminal division, I work in the civil division. Now I am in the best lawyers in America. There's only one other candidate running in this race. His name is drawing a blank now, Chuck Porter. That is a very, very high honor. It's the gold star. I'm also AV preeminent rated, which is a gold star. If you are an attorney, you know how difficult these things are to receive. These are done on a polling. The judges discuss your candidacy, lawyers discuss your candidacy, and it is the gold star. And I am very proud to have earned that distinguished recognition. Now, my sons are grown. When my sons went out the front door, my parents came in the back. My parents are 90 years old, and I take care of them. I also have been a Democratic committee person for 20 years. I volunteer my time at the Operation Better Block. I volunteer my time. Okay, I've gone for the recommendation, but more importantly, I am
Sorry, go ahead.
I am answering the questions now.
Okay.
I am AV preeminent rated. I'd like you to look that up. I am also in the best lawyers in America. They just had that come out recently. I think it was in the newspaper. The important things that I have, hardworking. I have an extremely
Okay, Beth, I'm going to interrupt you because we're into question time now. So
That's what I was doing. I was answering your questions.
Well, you answered the first question about the rating. We
Yeah,
get it.
the most.
So now we'd like to move to asking the questions from our list.
Okay.
Okay, as a common pleas court judge, you will preside over jury trials. Please describe how you will prepare for jury trials and what your most important consideration will be in presiding over jury trials.
Oh, okay. So they're different questions.
Yeah.
Well, when I go before a judge, which I do often because I am a trial lawyer and I have tried all over the country, the judge must be up on the law. The judge must have read the file. The judge must be ready to handle what is coming at him. He must know each side. He must get a feel for both the plaintiff and the defendant, or the prosecutor and the defendant. Most importantly, the judge has to read the file. I've gone into many jury trials and the judge doesn't know what's going on. His temperament is awful. And we can no longer have that. And we have a chance with these 9 to get a stellar group of judges on the court and make a huge difference.
Okay, what have you learned outside the practice of law that will help you be a good judge?
Well, I was a coach for 13 years. And I also have a brother who's autistic. And he has emotional issues. And I have learned that you have to be your brother's keeper. Not only do I take care of my brother, but I take care of my brother's acquaintances. And I'm on the clock 24/7. I will get calls at 3 a.m. in the morning because someone is in need. I think that you have to give back. You got to give back to the game because the game has given me so much.
That's wonderful. How are we doing for time, Mac?
20 seconds.
Okay, you have 20 seconds to sum up, or you can answer the Supreme Court question.
I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I love
Yes.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she's just the best. I just want to tell you, start spreading the news. I'm running for judge. I want to be a part of it. The courts.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next candidate up is Dan Koniseka. I probably mangled your name, so please repronounce.
Well, the standard joke is it's pronounced Smith, but actually it's pronounced Konechka.
I can understand. Koneska, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying the nice sunny day out today. I know that this is going to be a long day for all of you folks. Again, my name is Dan Konecki. I am running for the Court of Common Pleas. I have 34 years of courtroom experience. That's one of the reasons why I believe I was highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association. I grew up in the neighborhood of Morningside. I'm the oldest of 8 children. My wife and I moved to Shaler Township back in 1992, where we've resided since then. I was a Democratic committee member here with Shaler until I won my election as a magisterial district judge covering Shaler, Etna, Millville, and Reserve in 2017. I've been serving since 2018. During my 34 years of courtroom experience, I was a prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, in which I practiced at the local, state, and federal levels. When I was a criminal defense attorney, I was a member of the CJA panel in federal court, in which you are appointed by the federal judges and the federal public defenders to represent indigent criminal defendants. I've been on all sides of the courtroom. I understand what the problems are, what issues are, based on 34 years. If someone were to ask my wife where my home is, she would say the courtroom, because again, that's where I've spent the last 34 years. It's been somewhat of a joy, instead of driving into the city of Pittsburgh for 30 years, going through 2 stop signs, 1 traffic light, and have a reserved parking spot as a judge. The important thing that I've learned as being a magisterial district judge, which I understood both as a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney, every matter that comes into the courtroom is important to all litigants. And as such, you have to treat each one that with an equal voice. Give each member of on the side, and multiple sides actually in some instances, but you have to give each one a voice, whether you're a prosecutor or defense attorney, and definitely as a judge. And that's one of the things I definitely try to do as a magisterial district judge, and I would do so as a Court of Common Pleas judge, is make sure that everyone, even if I don't agree with them, that when they leave that courtroom, that they understand that I gave them a fair opportunity to present their case. Other than that, I'm open for some questions.
Okay, wonderful. The first, you've been serving on the bench. What has it taught you that you didn't know before?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of things. Landlord tenant. I, being a criminal defense attorney, being a prosecutor, didn't have much contact. It's amazing that the tenants don't have any access to legal advice at the magisterial district level. Now, once there's an adverse decision against the tenant, all of a sudden there are some resources. I wish, and actually there's a silver lining with the pandemic, because now there are resources that are provided to the tenants. And I hope that continues even beyond COVID-19. The other thing that I learned that is kind of distressing, and one of the things I'm really passionate about, are our juveniles. The truancy, there is a wealth of mental health issues, but there's a lot of resources out there, but there's some difficulty in joining those resources with the needs. And that's one of the things, I know I upset some of the administrators with the school, but I spent an awful lot of time on juvenile cases and trying to learn everything I can about the individuals that are before me, to try to formulate the best way to handle it as I go forward. That's one of the reasons why I'm seeking the Court of Common Pleas. For 30 years, I've been dealing with adult offenders. I really want to concentrate on juvenile offenders and try to innovate and try to do things that are better to make these juvenile offenders productive and successful adults.
Okay, terrific. As a common, there are times when a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice for parties before them? If so, when and why?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think a judge has to be a neutral arbiter. And one of the things that a judge needs to do is to make sure that the scales are equal in his or her courtroom. And therefore, there may be instances in which you don't cross the line, but like you said, you stretch it a little bit to make sure that both parties are on equal footing and able to present their case. So if you have someone, for example, who's a pro se defendant, oftentimes I prosecuted pro se defendants, have been in courtrooms and observed, court judges will actually bend over backwards. They'll still hold them to certain standards, but you'll bend over backwards in order to make sure that the pro se defendant is getting the fair shake that he or she needs in a courtroom.
Okay, Mac, how are we for time?
6 seconds.
6 seconds. Okay, favorite Supreme Court justice?
I really liked Earl Warren. I thought during that tumultuous period in the 60s, I think he navigated the court in a very, very interesting way as far as an attorney's perspective. So Earl Warren back in the 60s.
Thank you so much for participating.
Well,
Next
thank
up,
you, folks.
thank you. Next up is Brian Mulkin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Malkin, and I'm running to be one of your judges. I'm a Franklin Park councilman, and I live in the North Hills with my wife of 16 years and my 3 daughters, 15, 14, and 13. I've been a civil litigator for 25 years, handling every type of case you can imagine, with juries and without, in every type of courtroom. I've trained in mediation, and I've sat as an arbitrator on the Special Landlord-Tenant Arbitration Panel. I've chaired both the Environmental Advisory Council and the Zoning and Hearing Board in Franklin Park over the last 10 years and chaired both of them. As a chair, I conducted quasi-judicial hearings, often with pro se folks, and helped them get their case and their evidence in so they had a fair hearing, win or lose. Everybody that left knew what they were doing, knew that they were heard, and understood the process, and I'm proud of that. I volunteered my time to pro bono cases through the North Hills Community Outreach and the Allegheny County Housing Court, helping unrepresented folks in the Landlord-Tenant Court. Volunteering is what I do. When the Franklin Park Democratic Committee asked me to step up and run for 4 empty seats on the Franklin Park Council for the very first time, I ran and I was elected. I've helped my community neighbors fight against fracking, overdevelopment, stormwater, and flooding. I'm proud to say that Franklin Park passed one of the most restrictive fracking ordinances in the state, and stormwater remediation is underway, and we're one of the first communities in North Hills to add glass recycling to our municipal services. I'm ready to be a judge. I graduated from Washington Jefferson College with a degree in computer science, mathematics, and philosophy with honors, and was inducted in the Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society for my scholarship. I then went to Pitt Law School and spent my 3 years studying law. And after that, I started my 25-year career as a civil litigator doing trial work. And that's what we need. We need trial attorneys to be trial judges. If you send me to the bench, I will fight every day for fairness and equity, regardless of income, race, disability, gender preference, or identification. I've been endorsed by the Stonewall Democrats. To eliminate bias in my courtroom, I intend to staff my courtroom with minorities that fairly represent the communities that I serve. I want all of my courtroom staff to know about implicit and explicit bias and to fight against them every day. I want to do community outreach and provide educational opportunities in the courtroom so that folks that come into the courtroom are not coming in for the first time. I want people from underserved communities to step into the courtroom and have a positive experience. I want folks without lawyers to be treated with kindness and respect, which is what I've practiced all my career. My work ethic was created earlier on. As a child, I was a competitive figure skater, and I eventually achieved a double gold medal in the United States Figure Skating Association. That took hard work and dedication, and that is what my career is built on, and that is what I'll bring to the bench if elected. One more thing, 8 years into my practice, because of my computer science background, I passed the patent bar. So I'm the only candidate that you'll be interviewing that is also a patent attorney, as well as having your computer science and mathematics. Caring for people and for my community is what my career and my community service has been all about. My name is Brian Malkin. I'm the other skating Malkin in Pittsburgh, and I humbly ask for your endorsement and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are asking this of all candidates, and I forgot to ask Dan Konaneska. He is highly recommended by the bar. Brian, can you share your bar rating with us?
Yes, I was recommended by the Judiciary Committee in December of 2020.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. What division of the court would you prefer to serve on and why?
Well, I hate to say preference, but because of all the complex civil litigation that I've been involved with over the years, I think that I could do a lot of very good work working as a complex civil judge. I know Christine Ward is doing an incredible job, a yeoman's job, and I feel like that's going to be something that's going to need to be taken care of in the next few years again. And I have the experience and the background and the training to do that. Apart from that, I would be pleased to help Judge Hertzberg in the landlord-tenant court. I've got a lot of experience doing that work, I know that there's going to be an entire onslaught once the eviction moratorium is lifted, and there's going to be all sorts of folks, both landlords and tenants, they're going to need help, and they're going to need attorneys and judges that are well trained in that. And I'd be very pleased and honored to work in that division as well.
Excellent. What have you learned outside the practice of law that you feel makes you suited to judge?
What I found is that every single person should be listened to carefully, with kindness and respect. They have something to teach you, whether or not they come from a poor background, whether or not they've been in an underserved community. They have something to teach you, and they deserve to be able to communicate that, and you need to listen. I always tell people when I'm working with them, yeah, you need to tell me exactly what it is that you want. What are you feeling? Why are you here? What has brought you into my office that's so important?
Sure.
And then I listen. So
30 seconds left. You want to share your favorite U.S. Supreme Court judge with us?
yeah, it's Judge Ginsburg. She's my hero. Everything about her. Remember, I have 3 girls, 15, 14, and 13. I want to raise strong women. I can't think of any role model better than Ruth Ginsburg. And we lost a great person when she passed, and it's a big loss.
Time is expired.
Thank you so much. Our next
Thank you.
candidate is Alon Zur.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. My name is Elon Zur, and I am running for Court of Common Pleas judge. I've actually been a proud resident of the 14th Ward for past 30 years or so. While I'm originally from New York City, I came to Pittsburgh to attend Carnegie Mellon University in 1990, and then went on to graduate from Pitt Law. I live here in Squirrel Hill with my wife, Lisa, and my 3 children, and also my mom has just moved in with us also from New York recently. I've been working as a prosecutor at the Allegheny County DA's office for the past 22 years, my entire career. The reason I wanted to be a DA was a motivation to protect people. I wanted to help people by being a voice for victims of crime. Most of my career has been spent as a homicide prosecutor, primarily trying first-degree murder cases. And in doing so, I've been fighting to bring a sense of closure to victims' families, and also to try to hold those who commit these terrible crimes accountable. I prosecuted some very violent and heart-wrenching impact of senseless violence and illegal guns on our communities across the county. I continue to see unnecessary death of young people and communities torn apart. Since 2013, I've been supervising the DA's office Violent Crimes and Firearms Unit, where we prosecute individuals who commit violent offenses with the use of a firearm. But there's another side of what I do as a prosecutor, and it's just not about taking a case to trial and prosecuting. It's above all about doing the right thing. And what do I mean by that is just sometimes there's situations that have come across where you can legally proceed on a case, but it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. You have to take many factors into account. My main motivation after everything I've seen in the criminal justice system, which includes seeing a lot of people being sentenced to life in jail, is that jail is a last resort. I've seen the reactions in the courtroom when that happens, and nobody wins, and it's sad on all sides. And it's really formed me and motivated me in what I want to do as a judge. And my eye towards any case is how can we address the situation with jail being a last resort, looking at rehabilitative programs, for example. The other thing I also want to address to you all is that as a DA, it doesn't mean that I'm insensitive to criminal justice reform.
30.
I fully believe we need it. There are over-incarceration issues. We have individuals who are serving very long periods of probation, which just sets them up for failure. So again, my motivation is to help people as a DA and also as being a judge. And at the end of the day, I believe that I lead with compassion, but have to live in reality. And what I mean by that is that while I will look for alternatives to jail, see it as a last resort, the reality is that certain crimes necessitate a prison sentence, and that's the unfortunate reality.
Time is expired.
Fine. Okay, have you applied for the rating by the bar? If yes, please share.
Yes, I have. I've been rated recommended by the bar.
Okay, terrific. Are there times as a common pleas judge that you should stretch beyond established law to do justice for parties before them? When? Describe when and how you might do that.
Well, I think it's a very fine line, as Dan Konechka said, because as a judge, we have to keep in mind, first and foremost, you have to follow the law. If you don't do that, it's a very slippery slope. And there are laws that exist that as a judge, I'm not going to agree with, but you have to follow. Primarily, it's revolving mandatory sentences. There's nothing as a judge that you can do to avoid it if somebody is convicted of, say, first-degree murder or second-degree murder. So in those situations, while you may not agree with it, you do have to follow up. But in juvenile court, which is where I really would like to serve, I think there's to use something like restorative justice in those situations. So I do think there is a place for it, but one has to be very careful and mindful of the dangers.
All righty, you answered. I was going to ask you where you would prefer to serve, so you already addressed that. So Mac, how are we for time?
Minute.
A minute. So, okay, describe for us, there are times, you've done jury trials. As a judge, for you, what will be different in preparing for a jury trial or just presiding over the trial? How will you approach that as a judge?
Sure, it's going to take a lot of preparation. You know, I've spent thousands of hours in court. I've done hundreds and hundreds of cases, many jury trials. So I've seen it from the side where I am. But, you know, to be a judge, it's going to be a learning curve. And I think it's about preparation always. You need to be familiar with your jury instructions, the instructions that you have to give to the jurors. And also you want to make sure, and I don't know if this is going to be a possibility, but if I'm a judge, I would like to incorporate something where the jurors learn about implicit bias. A lot of people aren't even aware they have it. So having, 12 people that are going to decide the fate of somebody, it's really important if we can't at least show them a short 5-minute video, give them some information, just so they're aware of it when they process a case.
Okay, thank you so much for participating.
Thank
Have a
you
great
very
rest
much
of the
for having
day.
me.
All right, next is Anthony DeLuca.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. I am Anthony DeLuca, and I am a candidate for Court of Common Pleas, as I see everybody you're hearing today is. So I am a candidate, and the reason I'm a candidate is that I believe I have a unique set of experiences that puts me in a position to rule on cases and develop programs that some other candidates do not. Brief overview of my life and my career. I was born in Westmoreland County, rural Westmoreland County, and ultimately went away to college in Boston, came back to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, where I graduated magna cum laude in 1997. From there, I went to Philadelphia and clerked for Justice Montemuro, and then came back to Pittsburgh and clerked for Judge Lally Green. I actually came back to Pittsburgh, and I'm happy I did, but I came back because my mother had developed breast cancer and I wanted to be with her. So I came back to Pittsburgh, and then following that, I went for what has now become a short period of time in my career to the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office. There I went through various areas. I prosecuted everything from small offenses, where I learned a lot about what is and isn't important for criminal cases, all the way through homicides. The thing I'm going to talk a little bit, the thing I'm proudest of from my time there was helping to develop mental health court. That from there, I went and I became a criminal defense attorney. I've been doing that for over 15 years, where I have learned a tremendous amount. I've seen defendants and their families suffer as a result of incarceration and other issues. Then as part of that also, I am the only attorney in this race that has spent a substantial portion of his career representing unions, labor unions. So that's also an important part of what I do. So I want to talk about two things from my career. I know time is short. First, I do want to talk about those with mental challenges in the criminal justice system. It is a passion of mine. As I said, I was part of the team. There was one DA in before me who was there a short time, and then I was part of developing a lot of the protocols and how the court would work. From there, I learned the ability of restorative justice, the ability of parties to come together without fighting each other and to reach a resolution. And victims were happier, defendants were served, and it was just a very rewarding experience. From there, I have since represented Client Summit free and free costs in the mental health system, and I continue to do that. Finally, fighting for working families. I have learned the importance of healthcare and wages and dignity and people's work and in their lives. And as such, I have been fighting for over a decade for those rights. And I believe that is the most important thing. We can solve a lot of problems in this society if people have access to the benefits they need, the wages they need, the income.
That's a fact.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Can you share with us your bar rating?
I was rated highly recommended by the Bar Association.
Terrific. We'll start light. Who's your favorite U.S. Supreme Court justice?
The notorious RBG. I admire her courage and the changes she made in our entire legal system. So yes.
What have you learned outside the practice of law that you think will help you as a judge?
So I am the father of 3 children. Okay. And I have a family filled with teachers. Everybody in my family is a teacher. And they told me, Anthony, don't be a teacher. You are far too impatient to do it. Okay. And what I've learned with having 3 children, I've learned the importance of patience. And I think that taking that to the bench and allowing people to understand what's going on, lower the temperature in the courtroom, explain things, give them time to figure things out. I think that would be a very valuable skill on the bench. Yes.
Do you have a division of the court you would prefer to serve if
So
elected?
look, I would be happy to serve in any division, but the 2 divisions I would be most interested in are criminal justice. I'm very interested in programs like I talked, mental health court, substance abuse. I'd like more programs, and I'd like them to, eliminate records for folks and so forth so that they can move on. So I'd like to be criminal, and the other one would be civil. There's really no attorney on the bench right now who is very familiar with labor law issues, and I would be interested in being in the civil court and hear labor issues, sort of create sort of like a labor subdivision where I hear those issues, because they are different in many ways. So,
Okay. Mac, how are we doing for time?
We're right at 30 seconds.
All right, you want to sum up? You want to finish with some closing remarks?
yes, ultimately what I would say is that given my wide range of experience, I believe that, again, that is unique in this system. I believe we can change the court within the existing laws and make lives better for defendants, victims, and families. I really do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Tiffany Sizemore.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having this forum, and I am thrilled to be here. My name is Tiffany Sizemore. I am an assistant clinical professor at Duquesne University School of Law. I've been there for 6 years. My career prior to being a professor was as a public defender, both in Washington, D.C. and here in Allegheny County. I'm a native Pittsburgher. I grew up in Larmer, not far from the 14th ward, and I went to K through 12 schools in Pittsburgh, and then I left for college and law school, and I practiced as a public defender in Washington, D.C. for about 8 years. I moved back here in 2012. I ran the juvenile division at the public defender's office here in Allegheny County. And then in 2015, when the opportunity came to move over to Duquesne Law School as a clinical professor, I took that opportunity. I went to the law school because I wanted to create a legal clinic that was unique and innovative. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the last 6 years. I developed and direct the Youth Advocacy Clinic. We represent kids in juvenile court, and we represent parents and children in special education and in school discipline matters. Prior to the opening of the clinic, there was not another no-cost, full-service education provider where parents and children could walk in the front door, get no-cost legal representation in education matters. We do have lots of community partners in the clinic, and when I am not in court representing kids or on Microsoft Teams these days representing kids and parents, I spend my time doing policy work related to the areas that I practice in. I was appointed by Governor Wolf to the statewide juvenile justice task force. We're in the midst of that work now. I previously served and was appointed by Justice Deborah Todd to the State Juvenile Court Procedural Rules Committee. I do a lot of also grassroots work with organizations like the Education Rights Network, which is part of 1PA. I've done community work with One Hood, which many of you may be familiar with. So I have dedicated my life life to being a public defender and to being a public interest lawyer on behalf of individuals, on behalf of poor people. And that is work that I'm proud of. I am seeking a position as a judge in the Court of Common Pleas because I'd like to move from advocate to decision maker. I have 16 years of courtroom trial experience, and I need to move from what my advocacy position to being a decision maker and doing the things that I know will work to make courtrooms accessible to all in our community, to reduce racial and ethnic disparities, and to ensure that all voices are heard in the courtroom. Our platform is a platform of justice for all. That is a platform that I take seriously. It's a platform that I've lived. Thank you.
Terrific. Have you applied for rating by the American Bar Association? And if so, please share.
The Allegheny County? Is
Yes.
that okay? I have, my interview is Monday night at 6 o'clock, so I won't know my rating until Monday night or Tuesday morning.
Okay, terrific. What division of the court would you prefer to serve in and why?
I think criminal or juvenile, I think as a new judge, those are the two areas that I know best. And so I would love to start there. I'm open to going and will go wherever I am assigned. And I'm a fast learner, and I'm somebody who spent a career doing criminal law and then had to move into education law, or wanted to move into education law, and picked it up very quickly. But I think because criminal or juvenile is what I'm most familiar with, that's where I'd like to start.
Okay. Are there times a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice for parties before them?
As a judge, you're sworn to uphold the law, and I will uphold the law, but I believe that there are lots of opportunities in the law in terms of statutory language where judges can correct manifest injustice. And so if I felt it was appropriate, I would use those provisions of the law to correct manifest injustice. I know someone else said earlier, but I agree with this sentiment, especially where you have people without lawyers in proceedings. There may be times where you really need to be patient and work hard to ensure that that person is treated just as fairly, especially when there's a lawyer on the other side. And so I don't think that there's a need to violate the law, but I think that you can use the law and stretch the law to its fullest potential as a judge.
Okay. What have you learned outside the practice of law that will help make you a great judge?
30.
30 seconds. Yeah.
Okay, so patience and empathy. I think those are the two things. My moral base in my life, aside from my parents, obviously was my grandmother, and she raised me in this city to never judge a book by its cover, never judge a person just by looking at them, and to try to imagine yourself walking a mile in their shoes. And that's what I've done in my career. That's what I do in my life. And that is something that is inherent in me that I will take to the bench.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Okay,
everyone. Have a
thank
nice
you.
day.
Our next candidate, Nicola Henry Taylor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for all the hard work that your group has done to prepare this. I do want to apologize for being in my car. My campaign is door knocking today, but I'm very happy to be with you. For those of you who don't know me, I am an immigrant from Brooklyn, New York. I came to Pennsylvania for college at Slippery Rock on a full tuition scholarship. I live in Ross Township with my husband, who is a retired prison guard after 30 years, and I'm an adoptive mom, which I consider to be one of the best clubs to be in. With respect to my career, I have been a lawyer for 25 years. And in those 25 years, I've practiced in every division of the court: criminal, family, orphans, and civil. I currently am the Director of Diversity for Duquesne Law and a practicing attorney doing family law and criminal law. And I don't just do family law and criminal law. I have used my immigrant roots to represent immigrants. I do a type of work called special immigrant juvenile status, working with young people who came here unaccompanied and trying to get them a court order that helps them. I believe that that judges should be empathetic, to be experienced, and also be ethical. And I think those are three important qualities. And I think that those have been exhibited through my work. I believe that I am a proven leader in the Bar Association. One of the things I'm most proud of is when I started the Diversity Collaborative. It is now called the Committee for Diversity and Inclusion, and it includes every single affinity group. And that group has taken off, and we need to ensure that everyone in our system understands implicit bias, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those are fundamental things that are important at every decision point in our system. Some of the things that I find to be extremely important that I would like to see developed as a lawyer are issues with mental health. When I was an assistant district attorney, I handled mental health court after Anthony DeLuca. I was the one who requested to be in that program rather than going after some of the other assignments that others seem to think were highly important. I really believe that behavioral health issues are important. I'd like to see us do more about treatment and behavioral health co-occurring disorders for people in our jails and in our system. Another thing that's important is language access. We may have forms and we may have notices that go out to litigants that's in English, but we need to look at other languages. And lastly, solitary confinement in our jails is something else I'd like to see us look at. I'm not sure if Max said that I'm out of time.
We're almost there. So I'll ask you, please share your bar rating with us, Nicola.
I'm really excited that because I'm a former chair of the Judiciary Committee, and I've also been on the Judicial Excellence Committee, and I was the first candidate to get my rating this year, and I got a highly recommended. And I know what that system is, and I think it means a lot.
Terrific. What division of the court would you prefer to serve in and why?
I would love to be in family division because I practice dependency law and delinquency law, and I'm oftentimes a guardian ad litem. Dependency is when CYS is involved. Delinquency is when there's a criminal matter. I believe that that has fit my personality of wanting to help people and being able to work with all of those issues that affect our families.
What's the most important lesson you've learned practicing law?
The most important lesson I've learned is that things are not as simple as they look in paper. You may see an affidavit of probable cause that's written by a officer, and then when you've practiced in different areas and you've dealt with different people, you see that the complexities of the human spirit and what humans go through make it much more have various different things to it than just what it looks like on paper. And I think that I've learned to go a little bit deeper and really understand what's going on with people. And that's been a wonderful learning experience for me. I represent rural clients in Butler. I represent immigrant clients. I represent people who are in companies, people with different backgrounds, and trying to figure out how as human beings, we should all be treated with dignity and that we all have different lived experiences that are all important.
Thank you. Mac, how are we for time?
Just a little over 30 seconds.
You have your choice. You can sum up or share your favorite Supreme Court justice. Up to you.
I want that Supreme Court justice question.
Okay.
I would have to, I've been hoping that I would get that.
Terrific.
Thurgood Marshall. Okay, I love RBG. We cannot argue that. But if it were not for Thurgood Marshall, I would not be here. Brown versus the Board of Education and everything that he has done has helped me and others who are running for judge to be here. So I adore him and his legacy, and I'm so happy to be able to tell you all about that.
Thank you for spending time with us. Our next candidate up to bat is Jason Cervone.
Good afternoon, 14th Ward. My name is Jason Cervone. I too am running for judge in the Court of Common Pleas. I know I have 3 minutes here, so let me start by giving you a little bit of background on my legal career. I've been actually practicing now for 20 years, and I do primarily civil litigation. I'm actually a partner at the law firm of Burns White, and I've been practicing here for 17 years now. I'm actually licensed in 3 states. I'm licensed in Pennsylvania, Texas, and West Virginia. And I've actually practiced law at both the state and federal level in those 3 states, more than 10 different jurisdictions throughout those 3 states. And like I said, I do primarily civil litigation, and I handle cases annually, on a non-COVID year, anywhere from 75 to 100 cases active throughout the year. I've handled thousands of cases. You can do the math. I handle everything from pleadings when they come in the door through jury selection, trial, post-trial motions. That's basically what I do daily. Like I said, I've been here since 2004. I actually became a partner in 2014. And since that time, I've also had the opportunity to transition and diversify my practice. I actually also handle like a general counsel role for some small to mid-sized businesses throughout the region. To that end, to help my clients, I actually went back to school and got my LLM in tax in 2019 from the University of Villanova. That's exactly primarily all I handle throughout my, it's all I've handled throughout my legal career: transaction and litigation doing civil litigation and handling transactions for small to mid-sized businesses. But let me back up and tell you a little bit about my background before I became a lawyer, because I was born and raised in the north side of Pittsburgh. I graduated from Oliver High School. My mom, she was a Pittsburgh public school teacher. She taught in the Pittsburgh public schools for 20 years. My dad, he was a Teamster. He drove a Pepsi truck for 33 years. When I was at Oliver, I actually played football and basketball, and I had the opportunity to go to Westminster College on a football scholarship. When I was at Westminster, I played football 4 years. I graduated with a double major in criminal justice and political science. After graduation with the double major, I came back home and became a union laborer, local 373. I was a 373 laborer for about a year and a half, saved up enough money, went back to law school, and then in 2000, after graduating with top 10% of my class from WVU, I actually went down to Dallas, Texas. I got a job with a large international law firm by the name of Patton Boggs. It was headquartered out of DC, but I went down there and worked for 3.5 years. I was down there for 3.5 years. I met my wife, who's also a lawyer here in Pittsburgh. And this is where we were both from. We wanted to raise our family. So in 2003, I moved back here, took the bar, started working here at Burns White. And like I said, I've been doing civil litigation ever since. So in addition to being a lawyer, obviously, I have another aspect of my life, and I'm a father.
Time's expired.
Pardon me?
Time's expired.
Oh,
Time's expired. All righty. First question. Have you applied for rating by the American Bar Association?
The Allegheny County Bar Association?
Yes.
I have not been rated yet. I have submitted I'm trying to submit my application now, but I have not actually had the rating yet.
Okay. As a common pleas court judge, you'll preside over jury trials. Describe how you will prepare for jury trials and what are your most important considerations in presiding over a jury trial?
It's funny you should ask that, because I mean, that's a good question, because having had jury trials, and most of my jury trials occur in the first judicial district, which is Philadelphia. And one of the most frustrating things as a civil litigator doing jury trials is when a judge doesn't take into consideration the time that's of the jurors and the parties and the counsel involved. When you turn what should be maybe a 2 or 3 day trial into a 5 or 7 day trial, that impacts everybody's life. You know, some people can't sit through a jury trial for 5 to 7 days, but maybe be able to sit through one for 2 or 3. But that would, for me as a judge, would be my first consideration. Make sure that we're starting at 8:30. We are working, have a half-hour lunch, work, through, up till 5 o'clock, so we can condense and use the judicial resources efficiently and take into consideration people's time they're sitting there as a juror.
Okay, terrific. What have you learned outside the practice of law that you think will help you as a judge?
I think personally, I've learned that you need to take into consideration a person's life experiences and what's going on. It's hard to judge somebody unless you can empathize with them and feel compassion and think what it would be like to walk a mile in their shoes. So for me personally, I would take the opportunity to listen, understand each aspect of a person's life and what's going on before I could judge someone.
All righty. Are we at time up, Mac?
We have about 25 seconds.
Okay, your choice, Supreme Court or a summation of what you'd like to tell us?
Well, can I do two? One, Nicola, I agree with Thurgood Marshall, because that to me is a court changer. But two, in summation, I think it's important that I can take a different perspective from my legal background, my education, and my life experience to the bench. Thank you.
You're welcome. Alrighty, people, we are almost at the top of the hour and we built in, it is 1:58. So we're building in a 5-minute stretch break. So anybody that needs to stretch at this point, go ahead and do that. We'll commence again at 2:03.
Excuse me, can anyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, who are
Okay,
you?
this is Frank Correnti. My my webcam went out. Did you do anything to cause that?
No, we see your tattoo, Frank.
Well, you see my tattoo because that's a picture you put up or somebody put it up, but that's just a picture from Facebook.
No, we did not do that.
No, that
Ron,
must
you
be
want to
okay.
handle this? Yeah.
That's from your Zoom account, Frank. Somehow we didn't.
Pardon me?
We can't change those.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Frank,
The
this is
picture
Liz
you're
Healy.
saying, the
Frank,
picture
this
of my
is-
tattoo. Is that what you're saying? What's your name?
I'm Ron Gatos.
Oh, yeah, Ron. You're saying that the picture, the static picture there was a picture from Zoom.
It must be from your own account. Somehow you have a profile picture like that. If you
That's a
log in.
picture. Well, okay, regardless of that, that's just I didn't put that picture up, no. But I'm saying that there was a view of my face. It disappeared, and at the same time, the green light for my camera went out. So I'm asking, the co-host has asked you to start your video. What does that mean?
So just turn on your video again.
Okay, I'll click start my video. There, it went on. So somehow I turned it off.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how I would have done that? Touch
Well,
something?
Frank.
I can talk to somebody else, my sister,
Yeah,
my
Frank,
daughter.
why don't we're on a break right now. Let's.
Well, I'm sorry, why don't you take your break?
Yeah.
I don't
Gary-
see, I don't see it showing up here though, so I don't know what to do about that.
Well, we can hear you and you're not a candidate, so if you could just
Oh,
listen.
right, I don't have to look at my face. Okay,
Yes.
you didn't do anything. I'll find out about it later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Everybody can just keep an eye on Zoom. Zoom does that sometimes. The connections make it glitchy. Okay, folks, this is going well. Thanks for coming, Frank, and everyone else.
Middleman, have you joined us?
I have. Thank you for having me. All right, so my name is Lisa Middleman. For the last 34 years, I have represented the marginalized, forgotten people of Allegheny County. I'm a public defender. I started there in 1987 as a law clerk and worked my way up. Now I do homicide and death penalty cases for them. So I've worked on a lot of complex issues and a lot of issues of that were very emotionally charged. And I think I've managed to handle those professionally and competently. I'm also one of the original union organizers under the Steelworkers of the Lawyers of the Public Defender's Office. And for many years, I've served as the grievance officer who represents employees when the administration wants to discipline them. And I also file grievances on behalf of the entire public defenders group when there's an issue that impacts everyone. In my work with the Public Defender's Office, one of the things that I have to do when I prepare a death penalty case is to explain to a jury how an individual got to the position where they would commit such a heinous crime. And I do that by investigating their life history. So I have a great deal of experience in finding out what stressors act on people. I have a great deal of familiarity with homelessness, joblessness, mental health issues, addiction, and how they affect individuals in the legal system. I think that my life experience also informs the way I would act as a judge. It certainly has informed the way I am as an attorney. I, like many people, have been through the family division and a terrible divorce and had to try to find a way to keep my family together, even though my marriage fell apart. I've raised 2 children, one of whom is on the autism spectrum. So I've had a lot of experience in going to schools and advocating for my children. I'm 59 years old, and I've had a whole life that informs my decision making. We have a lot of work to do, not only in the criminal division where I have the greatest familiarity, but in the family division and in the civil division where, you know, I've heard complaints from folks who practice there that they're not getting the attention and the research done by judges ahead of time that needs to be done. The family division has a great deal, they have a great deal of litigants that come in pro se because cuts in funding to places like legal aid are causing people to be unable to actually afford the legal system. So there's a lot of reform to be done all throughout the system, and I'd love to reserve the rest of my time for questions that people may have.
Okay, have you gone before the County Bar Association for a rating?
I have. I was recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Okay, and this year?
Yes, very recently.
And we'll ask you the same question. What is your favored U.S. Supreme Court justice and why?
My favorite Supreme Court justice is Earl Warren, because under his leadership, we had an incredible expansion of civil rights and civil liberties. It was under his leadership that the Miranda decision came down, which allowed obviously criminal defendants to be advised of their rights prior to making a statement. Under his watch, we had the end to segregation. So I consider Earl Warren one of the most important and influential Supreme Court justices.
And are there times when a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice for the parties before them, and when?
Well, a lot of people will tell you that the judge's only job is to apply the law, but it is always, it's imperative that judges also interpret the law and interpret the law according to changing community standards, so to speak. So for instance, if you were a judge that said, I always have to follow the law, nobody would have ever declared that the death penalty was illegal for children. We would have never had protections for mentally ill people. So there are times when your interpretation of the law has to include notions of common human decency.
Thank you. Do you have anything more to add, or would you like to summarize your experience while you're seeking the club's endorsement?
Well, one of the most, and I neglected to mention that in 2019, I ran for district attorney. And the reason that I did that was not because I had an incredible desire or drive to be a prosecutor. I ran for district attorney because 34 years, I've seen incredible racial and socioeconomic inequities in our system. And I wanted to do whatever I could to try to remedy those inequities. And so
thank you very much, Lisa. We appreciate your remarks.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is George Heim.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the members. First, I am a proud member of the Independent Dam Club. Many of you may remember that I appeared in front of you in 2019 seeking your endorsement. And at that time, I was the only candidate talking about criminal justice reform. That is still my platform. I can tell you that in the past 2 years, things have only gotten worse. Systemic racism, overly long probationary periods, we're setting people up for failure instead of success. The reason that I'm running for judge is because I myself am a product of the Allegheny County Common Pleas Court. When I was 11 years old, I was the subject of a very nasty, very public custody hearing. And the judge in that case, had he followed the law at the time, would have, maybe should have, reached a particular conclusion, but he did not believe that that was what was best for me. So he thought outside the box and he did something different. In doing so, he changed my life. There's no doubt I would not be here speaking to you now if he had not done what he did. The decision that he made bears my name. It's a case called In Re Heim, and it's still occasionally cited in family court cases to this day. I talk about systemic racism, and I hear people say all the time, the system is broken. The criminal justice system needs to be fixed. Well, the truth is that's not the case. The system is working exactly the way that it was designed to work. Our criminal justice system, which was originally designed to disenfranchise people of color the LGBTQ community and those without money. A perfect example of systemic racism. And when you have systemic racism, a fair and impartial judge is working on top of a broken foundation. So even when they try to be fair and impartial, the results are skewed. Representative juries. The Constitution provides us the right to be tried in front of a jury of our peers. I can tell you that for people of color, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've done over 100 jury trials. You walk into a room and there's a panel of potential jurors, 35 people. Some of you may have sat on those panels. I can tell you that in all of that time, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen more than 1 or 2 people of color in that whole pool. So what that means is the deck is stacked. Even if nobody tries to do anything wrong, they're not striking people of color from the jury for bad reasons. That person has almost 0% chance of having a representative amount of people from their community on that jury. Now, part of that problem is the way that we choose those jurors. They're choosing from the voter rolls, and we know that the voter rolls underrepresent many people. We also don't know how they choose from within the voter rolls. So they have geographic, certain demographics. Judges need to stand up. We need to change the way that we do business. Part of the problem is the way that we elect judges. You have to have certain connections, a certain amount of money. We need to change the way we do business, both judges and the way that we elect judges. We need to change the system because
Okay, time is up. Mr. Heim, thank you very much. What was your, have you gone before the County Bar Association for a rating?
I have, and I was highly recommended.
Okay. And then you've spoken of what you have observed within Common Pleas. Our question is this: as a Common Pleas court judge, you will preside over jury trials. Please describe how you will prepare for jury trials, and what are your most important considerations in presiding over those jury trials?
Absolutely. Well, I am a trial attorney. As I said, I've done over 100 jury trials personally over the past 20 years. My preparation would involve trying to break down the systemic problems so that people can receive fair trials and true justice. And if that means walking into that jury room every time I have a defendant who's of color and looking at that pool, and if I don't see a representative number of people in their community, telling the jury personnel to send them out and get another pool. These are things that we don't do. Everybody knows it's a problem, yet nothing is done to deal with that problem. You can't receive a fair, just trial if the system is slanted against you.
And what division of the court would you like to serve in?
I would like to serve in criminal. That's where 95% of my experiences have been. I was a prosecutor for 7 years. I've been a criminal defense attorney for 15 years. I literally have spent almost every day in a courtroom over the past 20 years. I have some experience in family court as well from when I was a child abuse prosecutor. But obviously criminal is where I feel that criminal, everything that happens in criminal court kind of expands out into society. We're destroying people's lives. I've had clients commit suicide, overdose, and that doesn't just affect them. It affects their families and affects society as a whole. We all pay the price for what's happening to people in our system right now.
And lastly, who is your most admired U.S. Supreme Court justice?
Without a doubt, it would be Justice Brennan. Justice Brennan really brought forward the idea that the Constitution is a living document that needs to change with the times, take social movements into account. I don't think there's a justice that did more in that area than he did. He changed the way that most of us view the Constitution, and it allowed for decisions like Obergefell, et cetera.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Heim. We appreciate your remarks.
Thank you very much.
Our next candidate is Joseph Murphy.
Mr. Murphy doesn't appear to be with us.
All right. Mr. Ernsberger, are you available?
He's here. Hang on one second.
Yes, I am.
We welcome you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Richard Thomas Ernsberger. I'm running for Court of Common Pleas. I've been practicing law now for 14 years, and I received a recommended rating from the Allegheny County Bar Association. I'm running for judge because over the years I've seen how good government can be beneficial to people. I started out as an intern for the Honorable Congressman Coyne when I was in college, and from there, after college, I worked for the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. in public relations, and then I proceeded to go to law school. In law school, I worked for the Securities Exchange Commission, and then after law school was a clerk on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. I returned back to Pittsburgh, where I practice now, doing primarily civil litigation. I've represented plaintiffs and defendants in everything from federal false claims cases to consumer protection, breach of contract, and even where one of our elderly clients has been defrauded. Recently, we have a case going on right now where our client was let go by a major energy company, and he was the only, well, the three people that were let go, the only people who were not paid their stock options bonuses were minorities. And everybody else who was white and Caucasian were alleging received those types of benefits. So our firm over the years has done a lot of work in equal justice in regards to employment and things along those lines. So my personal practice, I've represented clients who brought whistleblower actions for federal false claims violations, where what they're saying is that the whoever it was the company was overbilling Medicare and Medicaid, and they blew a whistle, which can be detrimental to their career. In my private practice, I've also done a fair amount of pro bono work. We won an award when I was a young lawyer for families facing medical crises. I've also done pro bono work for students who've been sued by student lenders for defaulting on their federal student loans. I think that in many of these cases, this issue of economic justice, whether it's consumer protection violations or whether you're talking about having your career ruined because you decide to stand up against something that you see as wrong, is something that's especially important when you're an individual who's going forward. And as a judge, I've seen a lot of these types of cases, but as an attorney, I've also had people come before me who I realize that these cases may or may not have any merit, and recommended and not taken them. So as a judicial candidate, I'm running because I truly believe in the government, and I would hope to be able to continue that forward as a member of the bench. I've been published, I've taught a number of CLEs on bad faith insurance law. I've also have a CLE upcoming on board duties where I'm the moderator for board duties for nonprofit individuals. And in my free time, I volunteer for Junior Achievement, where I teach economic literacy basically to kids. We adopted Kelly Elementary as our school. And at Kelly, we, okay, thank you.
Mr. Ernstberger, I believe you said you have been recommended by the County Bar Association's Judicial Committee?
Yes, that's correct.
Another question, what division of the court would you prefer to serve in?
Well, my career has primarily been in the civil division. So I prefer to serve in the civil division. I've done a fair amount. I've done everything from motions practice all the way up. And I was hoping that if I got assigned, I would do my best to do whichever division I was assigned to, but primarily civil.
And what is the most important lesson you've learned in practicing law?
The most important lesson I've learned in practicing law is you need to listen. You need to sit down and you need to make sure that you understand what people are telling you. Because a lot of people don't understand when they come in to meet with you, what's going on, what the judicial process is, what's happening. There's also a lot of preconceived biases against justice in the courts. I had a case out in Beaver County where one of my favorite judges, we had a mediation. My client had a boundary dispute with a local government agency, and he came in with the absolute belief that during the mediation that he wasn't going to see justice even at trial. The judge sat down with us in the chambers with the defendant, or excuse me, we were defending it with the plaintiff, and basically laid out basically reassured him that justice would be done and that everybody had an even playing field in that judge's court. And when we left at the end of the day, we did have an agreement, and the guy actually truly believed, well, legitimately believed that it was an open court, and his belief that everything was stacked against him wasn't the case, just because of the judge's demeanor and ability to explain what was going on. And I sort of took that as one of the great lessons of being a lawyer, is that you need to be, if you're going to be a judge, you need to be able to have that demeanor so that when people come before you, they know that justice is being served and that everybody's in equal representation.
How much time do we have, Mac?
50 seconds.
Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Ernstberger?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm running for judge. I'm 31st on the Democratic ticket and 4th on the Republican. And thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ernstberger.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker, our next candidate is Richard Hosking. Mr. Hosking?
Just a second. I need him to start his video so I can.
Okay.
Here we go. There we go.
Welcome, Mr. Hosking. He's now muted. Just a minute. We can't hear you.
Okay, let me.
Now you're good. Yes, excellent. Welcome. We can't hear you. Okay,
Mac, did you have to unmute me?
you're good to go. We can hear you now.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. My name is Rick Hosking. Again, happy first day of spring. It's a beautiful day.
Oh.
And thank you for doing this. It's a great effort and we all appreciate it. I can say that on behalf of everybody. I am a lifelong resident of Allegheny County, born here in 1955. The only time I spent away was when I was at college at Dartmouth. Did my law school at the University of Pittsburgh, graduated in 1980 and started practicing at K&L Gates in 1980 and stayed there for the rest of my career. I'm the proud father of 3 adult women and 2 granddaughters, one of whom was born 2 days ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I spent my entire career at K&L Gates as a trial lawyer. In fact, I tried more cases than any other lawyer in the Pittsburgh office, all in the Court of Common Pleas in the Western District. And my experience reigned, I mean, you could pick out almost any substantive category, and I've handled that category. So from trade secrets to class actions to civil disputes to ethics claims, etc. I also did quite a bit of work in the pro bono area. I worked for Neighborhood Legal Services early in my career, representing tenants. I represented infants in custody disputes, and I represented Kids Voice when Judge McCready was then the general counsel of Kids Voice, and that was representing children who were either had past criminal issues or mental disabilities or other disabilities in connection with the school system. I worked very closely with Dave Hickton when he was the U.S. attorney on that particular matter. I also have been hugely involved in the community and charitable projects, most specifically Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. I was a board member there for quite a number of years and in charge of banquets for raising money for diabetes research. I've been involved in the Miracle League, which is for people with mental and physical disabilities. Sean Casey runs it. It does quite a great work for people with disabilities. And I have
30.
I'm sorry?
The 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
The 30 seconds. Okay. I also, and that arose out of autism in our family. But I was the general counsel of the Boy Scouts of this council, Pittsburgh Council. I was on that board, was very visible and active in my church. And actually, I am an Eagle Scout and proud of that fact. I have, as I said, practiced only, go ahead.
Time is up.
Okay.
Mr. Hosking, I do have several questions. The first
Sure.
is, have you sought a rating from the County Bar Association?
I can't until my questionnaire is in. Those are due next Wednesday. And I've talked to Dave Blainer and I will obviously seek that and get it.
Okay. What have you learned outside of the practice of law that you think would help you be a judge?
Well, I'm a huge believer in life experience. When I was a young person, I hated that word experience, and now I understand what it means. And I mean life experience, not just trial experience or courtroom experience, but life experiences of what happens to you and other people. And I think it builds character, integrity, honesty, fairness. And those are critical components of a judge in my mind. Judges must be of the utmost character and pillars of the community. And I think experience gives one an ability to assist the community and act as an impartial judge.
And what division of the court would you prefer to serve in?
Well, I would prefer to serve in the civil division because that's what I've done my entire life. And it's where I have the most experience, and I've taught trial tactics and courses on evidence, et cetera. So I would be comfortable in any division. However, I think that my experience would be most useful and of most service, which is why I want to be a judge, to serve in the civil division.
And lastly, what is your most admired U.S. Supreme Court justice?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
And why would that be?
Because of everything she overcame. She is an example of what someone can do against the odds, but with persistence. And she was always fair, open-minded, facile in her intellect, and flexible. And I have a huge amount of respect for her.
Thank you. How are we doing, Mac, the time?
Well, we have 2 seconds left, which is not much.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hosking. We appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your efforts.
Certainly.
Wonderful. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Tom Caulfield. Welcome, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Tom Caulfield, and I'm running for a seat on the Court of Common Pleas. I have been a magisterial district judge since 2010. I've heard over 26,000 cases in every area of the law that a common pleas court judge would hear. Civil cases, family division issues such as PFAs and juvenile matters, and criminal cases. Prior to becoming a judge in 2010, I was an attorney at the Office of the Public Defender for over 19 years. And when I left, I had risen to the level of deputy director. So for me, criminal justice reform isn't some election year issue. It's been the center of my career since the beginning. In those criminal matters, I have eliminated the use of cash bail unless requested by the defense, which they will sometimes do for calculation of time purposes. That's a personal preference of the defendant and the attorney representing them. The ACLU did a report about a year and a half ago and mentioned me as the judge who uses cash bail the least. In fact, Vic Walzak contacted me to help him facilitate a meeting down in Washington County because their MDJs were using cash bail entirely too much, and the president judge wanted to correct that situation. I was quite honored to go down and be part of that. I use treatment as a first option in my court. I have representatives in my court to help those who are struggling with mental health or drug and alcohol issues, so that I don't just send them off and tell them to get treatment. I make sure that they have an appointment scheduled, they know what they're expected to do and when they're expected to come back. And I found that to be very, very successful. I'm working with my 5 communities that I serve, which are Braddock Hills, Chalfont, Churchill, Forest Hills, and Swissvale Borough, to bring a pre-arrest diversion program to life. And what this will do is, instead of the police arresting someone for certain offenses, they will call an on-call social worker who will meet them and take the person who they would otherwise arrest. That the social worker will then ensure that this person receives the treatment that they need and no criminal charges will be filed. Let me see. I use alternatives to fines and costs when possible in my court, especially community service. I work with Woodland Hills School District, which is my district, to break the school to prison pipeline. And one recent year, prior to the pandemic, we saw 0 cases filed at my court. As a judge, it was my honor to perform the first, or one of the first same-sex weddings in Pennsylvania on the first day it was legal. I am on the board of directors of the Fair Housing Partnership, which works to ensure fair housing laws are followed in Western Pennsylvania. I'm married. My wife, Lisa, is an attorney with the Public Defender's Office. Together, we have 5 kids, all boys. 2 of them are named Alex. And I am highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association. And I was quite honored to receive that rating.
Time's expired.
Thank you. Are there times a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice to the parties before them? And in what circumstances?
You know, I get asked a lot of times, what's the most difficult case that you've ever had as a judge? And I think a lot of people think it'll be something horrific. It'll be like a horrible homicide case or some sort of an abusive situation. And I tell them truthfully, it's the case where the party that I like better is not the party that the law says should win. You know, I take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You know, I think that judges have enormous discretion in how those laws are applied, however. So I believe that while there is room for a judge to think outside the box, we have to stay pretty close to the box. Otherwise, we're just agents of chaos. And I don't think that that serves anybody's purpose whatsoever.
And what have you learned outside of the practice of law and as a magistrate that you think would help you be a common pleas judge?
Well, I'm 54 years old. And, you know, I've done a lot of things in those 54 years that have led me to believe that the one thing we have to do is to treat each and every individual as special and unique. You know, we tend to think of people in groups, and especially in the law, somebody's a defendant or they're a victim or they're a witness. They're a three-dimensional human being who really has to be appreciated for the complex person that they are. And I think when courts do that, we get better results.
Well, thank you very much. Mac, you said we're out of time?
We have about 15 seconds.
Okay, your very favorite, if that's the appropriate word, US Supreme Court Justice.
Thurgood Marshall. I studied a lot about him in law school and what he overcame, plus his career before he took the bench. I mean, his work in Brown alone would make him a legend. But I think that his work on the court really was tremendous.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Caulfield. We appreciate your being with us.
Thank you so much. I hope you all have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Our next candidate is James Sheets. Welcome, Mr. Sheets.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Jimmy Sheets. I am running for the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I'm a licensed attorney. I have been since 1998. I went to St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and then to Duquesne University School of Law. In 2000, I started with the Allegheny County Public Defender's Office, and I worked there for 5 years, representing clients in everything from relatively minor matters up through and including homicide cases. In 2005, I started my own practice and have been working as a lawyer in private practice for the last 15 years. The majority of my work has been in criminal defense. I have had a couple of forays into civil court. I have also represented hundreds, if not thousands of people in family court, predominantly in the PFA arena. And in that arena, I have had the privilege of representing both plaintiffs who were attempting to get a PFA. I did that on a pro bono basis for Neighborhood Legal Services and continue to. I have also had the privilege of representing defendants who were the subject of a PFA proceeding. I am 49. I will be 50 in May of this year. I am a father of one and currently a single parent raising a 10-year-old during a pandemic and all of that involves, including homeschooling and everything else. So I think that, you know, my 20 years of experience in practicing predominantly in criminal, I have been in the court pretty much 5 days a week for the last in excess of 20 years. I would bring that experience to the bench should I be elected on May 18th.
Thank you. As a common pleas court judge, you will preside over jury trials. Please describe how you will prepare for jury trials and what are your most important considerations in presiding over jury trials?
Well, I have participated in countless jury trials as a criminal defense attorney. And I think if I were a judge in the same type of situation, my concerns would be that the trial be fair, and that the constitutional rights of both the defendant be adhered to, as well as the rule of law. I have pretty much in every time I've picked a jury, when there has been a percentage of the jury pool that was not commensurate with the percentage of people in Allegheny County, more often than not, my client is African American, and if we didn't have at least 14 or 15% of the pool African American, I went to whatever judge we were in front of and made a motion for a more representative veneer. Those motions were across the board denied in Allegheny County. If I were elected and I were a judge presiding over a jury trial and someone were to make that motion, I would grant it. I think that people ought to have the opportunity to have a jury of their peers. As far as preparation, I would be familiar with the facts of the case, but I would let each side present the case to the jury. The judge in that situation is, the arbiter of the law only. The facts are to be presented to those 14 individuals exercising their civil responsibility to be a juror. So ensuring that a fair and equitable trial occurs in my courtroom would be my first priority.
Thank you. And have you sought a rating before the Bar Association, the County Bar Association?
That is pending, as I have not completed my questionnaire, but I'm in the process of doing that.
Okay, how much time do we have, Mac?
Just a little under a minute.
Okay. Mr. Sheets, what have you learned outside of the practice of law that you think would help you be a good judge?
My life experience has been interesting, to say the least. I have been through the criminal justice system as a defendant. I have represented hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal defendants. I have worked every position in a courtroom thus far, except perhaps stenographer, juror, and judge. My life experience has been a journey to where I'm at now. I am an addict and an alcoholic. I have, on May 18th, which is the day of the primary, God willing, I will have 4 years of sobriety on that date.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some very personal as well as professional thoughts. We very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Alyssa Cohen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Cowan, thank you.
Cowan.
Terrific. Well, hello. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself to you this afternoon. My name is Alyssa Cowan, and my impetus for running for judge goes all the way back to the summer of 2001 when I began my legal career as an intern in the Child Welfare Unit of Philadelphia's Department of Human Services. And sadly, it didn't take long for me to see the depersonalized, mechanical, and often chaotic way families were pushed through a system purportedly designed to help them. Having obtained my master's degree in social work prior to attending law school, the dehumanization of those entering the court system was juxtaposed to what I firmly believe the courts could provide to our most vulnerable communities. I knew then that I would commit myself to improving the courtroom experience for families, no matter what position I was in. I've taken each new step in my legal career with an eye on helping those most in need. This includes acting as sole counsel in about 8,000 juvenile court hearings, 500 of which I've tried to verdict. I've practiced in both DC and Pennsylvania and have provided legal trainings across the state of Pennsylvania, as well as have experience on both the national and international level. As a staff attorney at Kids Voice, and now in my current position as solicitor in the county law department representing children, youth, and families, I've witnessed firsthand the negative impacts of judges not having a background in social services and how that can often lead to the overrepresentation of children of color in the court system and poor outcomes for those children. One of my clients was an 8-year-old little boy who was prescribed a number of different psychotropic medications because of his fetal alcohol syndrome diagnosis and some behavioral challenges that he had. As his court-appointed medical decision maker, I worked with his team to cut his medications down to 3. Another client of mine was a teen girl who was sexually abused by 3 of her mother's boyfriends while her mom was struggling with a substance use disorder. This child was also a very gifted student, but her schools were siphoning her off to the disciplinary classrooms because of her trauma and history of multiple mental health placements. As her court-appointed educational decision maker, I worked to get her into the gifted and honors programs that helped her become the college-bound student that she wanted to be. It is critical to have judges who have the training and experience, as well as the commitment to meeting all the complex needs of the children and families appearing before them. I am the candidate with the depth of experience in both law and social work, as well as the demonstrated commitment to achieve those goals. Moreover, if we are serious about criminal justice reform, then we need to do right by our court-involved children at the outset in both their delinquency and dependency cases, or else we'll see those children entering the system as adults. In closing, my experience working in juvenile law is unmatched by any other candidate in this field. I'm rated highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What is the most meaningful thing you've learned in your practice of law?
I think for me, the most meaningful thing that I've learned is the importance of always taking a trauma-informed approach to any person who's entering our courtroom. Everybody who's entering our courtroom has experienced some crisis in their life of some sort. And it is incredibly important that when they are coming through the courthouse and into those courtrooms, that they are met by individuals who are approaching them in a way that's creating a safe space, a space for them to be able to feel comfortable telling their stories, a space where they feel open to be able to ask questions and never feel stupid or, scared or, everyone's nervous when they walk into a courtroom, and anything that all of us as the professionals in the room, including, the judge is the one who sets the tone in the courtroom and manages the courtroom, but it's really everybody's responsibility to provide some level of comfort to those individuals coming in so that they can tell their stories in order for the judge to be able to get the best information, the most accurate information, and make the best decision that's going to enable them to walk out of the courtroom with a decision that impacts them in a beneficial way instead of a way that's just going to lead to further problems in their lives and further interactions with the court.
30 seconds.
And who is your most revered U.S. Supreme Court Justice?
And we see your shelf.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. Yes. So I guess they're self-explanatory. Yes. Your second most revered.
Not long ago, my family knew how heartbroken I was when Justice Ginsburg passed this past fall and how devastating that was. Just as a woman in the law, just as a woman, our basic property rights, our basic rights to have control over our finances, to have the ability to work, much less be a professional in the law. We all have Justice Ginsburg to thank. And I think we often don't realize just quite the tremendous impact that she has had on our everyday living. So yes, I think that's a little bit of a...
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your observations, your remarks. Thank you, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Giuseppe Roselli.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Let me first apologize for being in my car, but my team and I are out in the field, and I did want to spend the time with you today to introduce myself. My name is Giuseppe Roselli. I am a criminal defense attorney and a trial lawyer. Every day for the past 20 plus years, I've walked into the courtroom fighting for equality, fighting for fairness in process, and trying to convince those on the bench now that there is another way to go about the process of administering justice. I was born and raised in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I was raised by a 17-year-old mother. and a stepfather who's African American. I was the first to graduate high school, the first to go to college, the only person in my family to go to law school. There's no silver spoon in my world. We grew up as part of the have-nots in our community, and it was through hard work and a dedication to honoring my family name that brings me to this point where I have the benefit and honor of speaking with you. I'm married with 2 children. My family spent 20 plus years on the north side of Pittsburgh in Brighton Heights. We recently moved to the Swickley area about 3 years ago. I volunteer as a trial advocacy professor at the University of Pittsburgh with Judge Beth Lazera. And during the pandemic, I created a program for a couple of underprivileged communities through the Wilkinsburg Library and the Carnegie Library, where we provide free legal advice via Zoom, so that individuals don't have to travel and be out during this time. There's a very personal reason as to why I'm running. Of my 2 children, my 12-year-old is adopted and she's African American. And for the past 4 years, we've watched our country be divided based on race, based on the color of skin, based on politics. And during that time, my 12-year-old, 10 at the time, is learning the lesson about slavery. And I can tell you that conversation, that lesson plan was concerning. She was scared. You can see the fear in her face. There were 3 questions that she had during that process when we're talking this out. The first was why? And I gave her the best answer I could. The second question was, will it happen again? And you have to remember, the TV is showing people screaming Black Lives Matter and what that means to her and what that means to our family. And I gave her the best answer I could. The last question is the one that stopped me and brings me here with you today. Will you protect me if it does happen again? And it was in that moment, not only did I recognize that I could be doing more, I should be doing more.
Thank you. Have you sought the rating from the County Bar Association?
I have. I've been recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Okay, thank you. As a common pleas court judge, you will preside over jury trials. Please describe how you will prepare as a judge for those jury trials. And what's your most important consideration in presiding as a judge?
So the first, I spend a lot of time in my bigger cases that go to jury, working pretrial motions. And I think all pretrial matters should be resolved as early in the process as possible, so that the litigants know what the rules of this trial are going to be moving forward. The goal of a judge, in part, is to create an environment that allows lawyers to be efficient and effective when doing their job. And that would be one of I believe the primary focus of a trial judge should be, to make sure that the lawyers can do their job in a way that is efficient and effective.
And are there times a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law for justice to the parties before them?
So I am guided as a judge and as a person, I am guided by the law, but I'm also guided by my conscience, and I'm also guided by a devotion to humanity. And if we as a system chose not to be creative and think outside of the box, our justice system today would be very different than what it looks. Our justice system today would be very different than what it actually looks like. If we did not make the changes, if there weren't jurists that have taken that step in creative thought and thinking outside the box, we would not be where we are today. And unfortunately, we're not far enough. There's more work to be done.
So we're out of time, Mac, did you say
No,
that?
no, we've got another 25 seconds.
Oh, okay, very quickly. Who is your most revered US Supreme Court Justice and why?
So Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm raising 2 daughters. I want them to know that they can be anything that they set their heart, they set out to be through hard work and caring about people. Thurgood Marshall set the groundwork for my.
Thank you. We very much appreciate your remarks, Mr. Roselli. Our next candidate is William Kay. Welcome, Mr. Kay.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm in the field, so my apologies. My background is on my website, williamkai.com. I believe you guys have all the answers to the questions I submitted for the 14th Ward. Telling you a little bit about myself, probably in the words of somebody that's supporting me, believes in me. Bill has a reputation for integrity and is a pillar in his community. His experience as a defense lawyer in private practice and as a former prosecutor with the Office of Attorney General illustrate his successful leadership and competence in court. That's from the Honorable Jake Wheatley. I'd also like to tell you just a little bit about why I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. I think we're at a time for generational justice to have some transformative reforms and second chances. My pledge is to bring equitable and fair justice to every citizen every time. I want to bring the courtrooms to the communities. I want to bring the resources of intervention and second chances out into the regions in service of our people in Allegheny County that are impacted in most of the disenfranchised and alienated sections of our city of Pittsburgh, for instance. So again, I think the role of a judge is not just to sit and preside over cases behind the bench, but is to lead by example and be an informative source of knowledge and education, mentoring people that have to have a second chance, and being accountable and listening to the people in terms of what they would like to see done in our court system. Again, I believe that I've been twice recommended by our Allegheny County Bar Association for this prestigious honor. And it's an honor for me today to present in front of the 14th Ward Independent Club. And I'm welcome to any questions at this time.
Thank you. What have you learned outside the practice of law that makes you think you would be a good judge?
I work a lot with children on the spectrum. I work with adults with disabilities. And I think that the patience and persistence that an individual must adhere to help those individuals, to lift them up, to enable them to create leaders out of these individuals that in many instances are discarded or not thought of. So when we're talking about my platform of access to justice, I do think in order to transform our courts, I've learned that we need to make them accessible to people with disabilities, to people with mental health, and as Giuseppe and some of the former judge candidates said, the folks struggling with addictions.
And how would you describe how you would prepare for a jury trial as a common pleas judge?
I've prepared for thousands of them, both as a judicial law clerk for the judges that I served in the trial division, and I prepare for my trial cases diligently. So I think you'd have to have a firm understanding of the law. From a judicial standpoint, you want to look to what the attorneys are bringing to the court's attention, listening to them in oral arguments, listening to the briefs that they would submit in terms of any pretrial litigation matters. And you also have to think, are they really representing the facts in the law in an ethical manner? Because a lot of times the advocacy is that win at all costs, and people are misrepresenting or twisting or stretching what the law actually is and what the facts actually are. So I think you have to be balanced and fair. I think you have to be thorough and diligent, but I also believe that conscience has to guide you.
And to follow up on that, are there times when a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to meet justice? And in what situations?
The paramount role of a judge is to follow the law. The legislature has to change the law. I think, however, that if you looked at some of the revered justices that have expounded on the law in instances of injustice, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Thurgood Marshall, I think that their dissents have actually shaped the law in the future. So again, a judge must show a judicial constraint, but also must temper that law and order with mercy and compassion. I believe empathy is important for judges, and when they were going to push the envelope or sort of be creative and thinking outside the box, I think it's because of the judge's sense of empathy. I know that that was the way that the judges that I worked with felt about the law, and that's the way that the judges that I appear in front of feel about the law as well.
And just to clarify, what division of the court would you prefer to sit in?
30 seconds.
Juvenile.
And for what reason?
I represent thousands of juveniles, and I see how the system's broken and it needs fixed.
All right. And you mentioned justices. Time is up. Sorry, your time is up. Thank you so much, Mr. Kay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, we still have a lot of time, much time before 3 o'clock, so we're going to just move into our next panel of contestants. So we welcome Sabrina Corbell or Corbel. Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
You're on. You're ready.
Okay,
It's good.
thank you. I appreciate that. So hello to everyone. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for all the hard work that went into this forum. I know it takes a lot of hard work, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone and to tell them a little bit more about myself. So my name is Sabrina Corbell. I am the legal director at the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. I've worked there for nearly the last 20 years, representing victims of domestic violence for free throughout the family division. And I am a trauma-informed trained attorney, and in my capacity as the legal director, I've managed over 7,000 cases, primarily in the areas of child custody, divorce, and protection from abuse. And I can tell you that it's been my honor to stand next to survivors as they are doing what I think is some of the most courageous work anyone does, which is go to court to tell their stories and ask the court to protect them. And it's been my privilege to give victims and their families a voice when they didn't think that they had one in the court system. Now, like many candidates that I think you'll hear from today, I think we need to prioritize criminal justice reform, absolutely, immediately, and without hesitation. But I think we're at a moment in time where we need to look at transforming our courts holistically across all divisions so that we make our courts more safe, accessible, and transparent. And when I think about the clients that I serve, survivors of domestic violence is not usually the only thing on their plate. Usually they're dealing with transportation obstacles, risk of losing their housing, getting their kids to school, childcare, whether or not they're going to have employment. And usually those are the same kind of barriers that many of the people who access our court system are facing. And right now our courts are not doing a good job at trying to remove those barriers. And we need to improve accessibility immediately. We need to meet people where they are. We need to expand our courts back into our communities. We need to regain the trust in our communities, and we need to expand remote access. And the pandemic has showed us that. So the best example I have for that is that when the court facilities were closed due to the pandemic, almost a year ago today, there was a need for survivors to access the court still to get protection. And so rather than just shut things down, I spearheaded a collaborative effort with neighborhood legal services and the courts to create a remote system where survivors could petition the court for protection remotely, appear before the judges remotely, and then obtain their protection remotely. And in those first few months of doing that, we handled over 600 cases for survivors of violence. And then we went on to represent them in final PFA hearings. And in the meantime, we're now expanding that system so that survivors can obtain their protection all the way through to the very end without ever having to come down to court. And that's the kind of court that I dream of, one where judges are public servants, one where we're engaging the community, the people doing the work, and bringing them in to make collaborative and effective change, and one where we're meeting people exactly where they are. So I've dedicated my entire career to making changes for those folks who are most resource burdened. I think when you do that, you make improvements for everyone. I'm highly recommended by the Bar Association. I am proud of that rating, proud of my work, and I would be honored to have your endorsement.
Thank you very much. A question, are there times a common pleas judge should stretch beyond the established law to do justice for the parties before them, and under what circumstances?
So I do think that judges are bound to apply the law, but I think in many of the cases that I've worked on as an attorney and that I've seen in court, we need to look at people where they are in the moment and where their needs are in the moment. And that's why courts are given discretion. I think that judges, if they are going to use discretion, have to be clear on the record about why they are stretching their decisions. Folks need to understand why those decisions are being made. But I've had to be creative my entire life with representing survivors of violence, thinking outside the box. And I think that same theory applies to judges making decisions, as long as they're sound and they're made clearly with the message coming from the judge to folks about why it's happening.
And how would you prepare as a judge to preside over cases?
So two things. One is that I think you have to prepare to understand the process and procedure and the law, right? That's what we learn as lawyers, and that's the kind of skills that we can take to the bench. But I think right now what's most important is that we have to prepare to engage people so that they understand what's happening in their cases. You know, too often right now, messages are not coming directly from the judges about the outcomes of cases. They're being discussed in the hallway, not from the bench. You know, people need to understand what happened when they were in court that day, why it happened, and what's the next step? Where is their case going? And they need resolution. Folks might not always agree with the outcome of their case, but when you get resolution, it puts you in a place where you can move on from where you were. And so those are the kinds of things that I would do to prepare, treat people as human beings, engage them, and help them understand what's going on in the court case.
And very quickly, your most revered US Supreme Court Justice.
Oh, well, that's easy. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm sure
Okay.
everyone has said that, though. I should have worn my pearls today. I apologize.
Yes, the pearls. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
All righty, everyone, it's time. It's 3 o'clock. It's time for our stretch break. So we will commence again. Oh, actually, it's 3:01. So we will take a short break to 3:06 and start with our next candidate. Thank you for hanging in there. It's going so well. And thank you, Sabrina, for joining us.
Thank you.
All righty, everybody, it's 3:06. Welcome back to the next hour of candidate interviews. First up to bat is Zeke Rediker. Zeke.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello.
Nice to see you. So my name is Zeke Rediker. I am running for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. I want to thank Karen and the rest of the 14th Ward Club. I'm from the 14th Ward. I grew up in Squirrel Hill, last block of Bartlett Street before Shenley Park. I moved back to Squirrel Hill a number of years ago when my wife got a job as a law professor at the University of Pittsburgh. She's a scholar of women's reproductive rights. I'm running because I'm passionate about the judiciary, passionate about my hometown of Pittsburgh, and passionate about ensuring access to justice for all people. I'm an attorney at Reed Smith. I practice both trial and appellate law. I grew up right here in Pittsburgh, as mentioned, went to East Hills Elementary, Frick Middle School, Taylor Alderdice High School. Having gone to East Hills, which was a magnet school that helped to integrate Pittsburgh public in the wake of the civil rights movement, was formative for me because it allowed me to grow up with kids from all over the city. I ended up going to undergrad at Cornell, grad school at Oxford, and then Michigan Law School, where I originally met my wife. I started my career at Reed Smith, and then I was a federal court clerk in New York City, where I worked for the first Asian and LGBTQ federal judge in the country, got to work on one of the largest trials in the country at the time, which was the Department of Justice's prosecution of FIFA, the international soccer organization, for corruption. Also clerked at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit in Detroit, where I helped adjudicate the civil rights case against the county clerk in Kentucky, who refused to issue marriage licenses to gay couples in the wake of Obergefell, which legalized same-sex marriage. And I'm running because I really care about the issues in this race, two in particular. One is criminal justice reform, and the other is fair housing. I think it's not a stretch to say that our criminal justice reform system is broken, and there needs to be a lot of work done to repair it. Judges have an important role in that process. After George Floyd was murdered, I helped to establish a permanent, firm-wide criminal justice reform pro bono program at Reed Smith, my law firm, and I've worked in a number of different spaces, including habeas cases and juvenile life without parole, housing as well. 90 to 95% of tenants facing eviction in housing court in Pittsburgh do not have access to lawyers. I have represented uncounseled parties, especially single mothers, in cases in one where we had to prove the existence of bed bugs in my client's apartment. So we were able to hire a specially trained firm that trains bed bug sniffing dogs. And we got this beagle named Sonny. And when he walked up into her apartment, he started going nuts because there were bed bugs everywhere, in the walls, in the floor, in the ceilings. And we were able to get an expert report and settle her case within the week. But I can tell you that not that many tenants facing eviction have access to a competent counsel, let alone bed bug sniffing dogs.
Okay, Zeke, we have to move on to the question period now.
Sure.
Can you share if you've applied for the Allegheny County Bar rating, and if so, what it is?
Sure. I have applied. I have all of my materials in. I had a preliminary interview last week, and I have my committee interview next week.
Thank you. First question, you spoke in your opening. What are some ways do you think judges could remove financial barriers to delivering justice?
So one of the things that judges can do, and this goes back to what I was talking about in housing court, is that, you know, unlike the criminal division, where you have a right to counsel, you have no such right in the civil division, including housing court. I think it's incumbent on judges to try to level the playing field as much as possible, to try to get to know the parties, to show compassion, to try to understand people's circumstances, and to really do their best in the amount of time that they have to figure out what the facts and law of the case are, regardless of whether somebody has an expensive lawyer or no lawyer at all. Judges really need to take cases and they need to understand people.
What's the most important lesson you've learned in practicing law?
That there's always a person behind the case. I've practiced law both as a litigator, meaning as an advocate, but also as a federal court clerk, and which gave me a good perspective on the court system. These are human beings that appear before the court. I think that judges always need to keep that in mind. I worked on a case that at first blush, when I was in New York City, at first blush seemed to be a slam dunk for the Department of Justice. It was an immigration case where a man had been charged with illegally re-entering the country. But when we dug and we dug, we realized that this was an issue of first impression. And this was an issue that the Second Circuit had never ruled on. And as a result, we ended up dismissing the indictment against this particular individual, partly because of his circumstances, but also partly because of an error in the law. And I think that's really important for judges to remember.
How are we, Mike, for time?
6 seconds.
You want to do the Supreme Court Justice quickly?
Sure. William Brennan.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much for participating today. Zeke, we appreciate it. Our next candidate is Ryan Heminger.
He's joined us, but I need him to, there we go.
All righty.
I apologize, folks. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Ryan Heminger. I'm an attorney with Leach, Tishman, Fiscaldo, and Lample, a Pittsburgh-based law firm. Two of my partners are members of this club, Steve Irwin and Doug Rabuzzi, who've known me for many years. And if anybody has any questions on the side, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk about their relationship with me. A little bit about me. I'm a 2005 graduate of Duquesne University. School of Law. While I was there, I was a research assistant for Professor Ken Gormley. After graduation, I was a law clerk for Chief Justice Ralph Cappy, followed by a 2.5-year stint with Superior Court Judge Maureen Lally Green. After that opportunity to clerk for them, I went into private practice with Leach Tishman in 2008. I've been there ever since. I became a partner in 2013. Over the course of my career, I've had an opportunity to be involved in a very diverse group of cases, a diverse practice. I've represented individuals, represented businesses, and I've been in courts all across the United States. One of the things that I have learned in being in courts across the United States is that there are many different styles of judges, and good and bad. And I think I've taken the best that I've seen and some of the worst that I've seen and learned from it. And as a judge, I will apply the lessons I've learned in real practice. A little bit about me, aside from law, I am a director of the Elizabeth Ford School District. I'm on the school board. I've served since 2015. We are an economically diverse school district from the standpoint of approximately 40% of our families are economically disadvantaged. We've done a tremendous job at Elizabeth Ford of making sure that education is provided, particularly during this pandemic, the last now 12 months. We've made it a priority to get our children back in the classroom. We did that back in November with the elementary students, and at the start of the new year with the middle school and high school students. But we were fortunate enough that we made investments in technology years ago with students having access to iPads. Every student has a district provided iPad, and they were able to seamlessly transition into a remote setting when the pandemic struck. We missed a total of 1 day of school of education when the pandemic struck. So that I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of my service on the school board. And it's really what has prompted me. I'm sorry, is my time?
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. That's what really has prompted me to want to continue in public service. I have a good law practice. I'm not looking for a different career. I really am committed to public service. I believe that the judiciary is an opportunity to serve the county in a way that connects with my background and my experience.
Time's expired.
Alrighty, would you please share with us if you've applied for the Allegheny County Bar rating, and if so, what it is?
I have applied for the bar rating and candidly, I was rated as not recommended at this time.
Great. As a Court of Common Pleas judge, you'll preside over jury trials. please describe for us how you will prepare for these types of trials and what will be your most important considerations.
Well, there are a number of very important considerations for jury trials. One is to make sure that the jurors are unbiased, of course, and they are comfortable and able to hear all of the evidence under the evidentiary rules. So as judge, it will be critical for me to ensure that the rules of evidence are properly followed, and to maintain control over the courtroom. I've had jury trials. I know that jurors lose sometimes focus when evidentiary issues arise and things are delayed. So judges need to be able to make quick decisions on evidentiary issues to keep things on pace, on track, and make sure that evidence that's inadmissible, it doesn't leak in.
Are there times when a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice for the parties? If so, when?
Quite candidly, I think judges have to be bound by the law as it's written, and then the precedent that's been established. Is not for common pleas judges to create law from the bench. I think that is a very slippery slope that does no justice to anyone. And fortunately, we do have an appellate system and other opportunities for litigants if the law doesn't work correctly to appeal to try and set new precedent.
Do you want to take on your favorite Supreme Court justice and share with us who your favorite U.S. Supreme Court justice was?
My favorite Supreme Court justice was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I had the opportunity to meet her in person when I was sworn into the Supreme Court back in 2015. And she was very gracious with her time and spent about an hour talking to our small group about important cases and her experiences, which she has a tremendous biography. So from a personal standpoint, I've enjoyed her.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. Hemlinger.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Our next candidate up is Chelsea Wagner. Hello, Chelsea.
Hi, how's everybody? Thanks so much for having me. So I am Chelsea Wagner, and the reason that I'm in this race is because I really believe that the future of our justice system is at stake. And while we have lots and lots of challenges, we really have tremendous opportunity right here in this election. And I think that this applies to the concerns that we have nationally, but pardon the cliche, I should say, but of course, all politics is local. So many of you know me as county controller, and prior to that as state representative, but I have been an attorney for 16 years. I started as a plaintiff's attorney, and over the course of my years as an attorney, I've worked for 3 very good firms throughout Pittsburgh, maintained practice for most of that time, but I'm not shy to tell you that my foremost commitment has been to the oath that I took to office and really working on public advocacy, as I would describe it. I think it's important that we step back too in this race and understand that the role of a judge, as I would define it, is really 2-part. Of course, it is to adjudicate the matters before him or her in their own courtrooms with the highest standards. But secondly, especially now as we're rightfully talking about all of the reforms, we need judges who exhibit leadership within the system of justice to be stewards. And really, otherwise, if we are not looking at this whole system, we're never going to implement the reforms that we're talking about. So what I believe that I bring uniquely to this race is what has marked my career in public service. And that's the commitment to not just speak truth to power, but to hold our institutions accountable. And that's the really hard and tedious work thereafter to ensure that we're able to implement change. So as I said, in public advocacy, I've been proud to work on matters as wide-ranging as environmental justice, to healthcare access, to also very specific matters within the jail and within our system of justice. To cite just a few examples, if it wasn't for the efforts that I led as controller, within our county jail, we would still have a private predatory healthcare provider that really is at the center of the prison industrial complex. Likewise, our office has led efforts at fines. fines and fees reform, to make sure that individuals who are saddled with fines and fees that they can never pay, that those should be forgiven. And we've been working with different judges and magistrates to implement those reforms. I've also served on the House Judiciary Committee, where I was a strong advocate for sentencing reform. But all of these, I believe, are important because we need individuals who are going to be able to implement the change.
Thank you. Chelsea, have you applied for the Allegheny County Bar Rating? And if so, what is it?
I am in the process of applying for that.
Thank you. How would you use and implement restorative justice measures if you're elected as a judge?
So I think restorative justice applies at every single interaction that a litigant or any other individual that is a party to a case or a witness or otherwise. So I think it is important in the role of a judge for understanding your administrative responsibilities. So you need to make sure that every interaction that that individual has when he or she enters your chambers, your courtroom, is one that is completely devoid of any sort of biases. But I think in terms of the justice within our system, I reference the work that I'm already doing on fines and fees reforms. Judges can forgive that immediately. We need to look at the individuals as whole people with depth. And as in the words of Brian Stevenson, I would say that every person is not, probably slaughtering this phrase, but we're not defined by the worst things that we've ever done.
Correct, yes. As common pleas court judge, you'll preside over jury trials. Please describe how you'll prepare for jury trials and what will be your most important considerations in doing so.
I think the most important consideration, which has been referenced a few times here today, is in jury selection and ensuring that there is a jury pool that is often not the case, that is certainly representative enough to ensure an unbiased jury.
Okay. And lastly, we'll give you a go at your favorite Supreme Court justice.
And that's also 30 seconds.
So I would have to absolutely mention Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Thurgood Marshall. But since I need to add just one other aspect, I would add Louis Brandeis. And I think that's particularly important when we're looking at the entire body of law in terms of civil justice and some of the specific challenges that we have today.
Great. Chelsea Wagner, thank you for joining us today. Our next candidate is Mark Daffner.
Hi there. Sorry, I was having a little trouble unmuting. I came down here for the meeting and realized my laptop has something is wrong with it. I have no idea what it is. It probably rests with one of my 3 kids. I know I'm going to get right to the chase because I know you guys have my profile. Many of you know who I am. I used to be your neighbor for many years on Shady Avenue. Now I'm not. I'm in the South Hills. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Daffner. I am 52 years old. I'm married. I have 3 daughters, 14, 7, and 5, making me a very old dad. And I live in Green Tree Borough. Now, I've been practicing for almost 30 years, and I am what is known as a trial lawyer, a true trial lawyer that tries cases. I have handled thousands of cases for thousands of people across Pennsylvania. I've been in 33 of our 67 Pennsylvania counties. And, people always say, oh, what's the last time you represented somebody in court? Well, for me, I had 9 hearings this past week in 4 different counties plus federal court. So suffice to say, I'd like to think I know a little bit about the court system and what needs to be done. And, the big things that, I'm really impressed with this field of candidates this year, just because we all seem to recognize the issues that need to be dealt with in court and need to be changed. For me, these are not just talking points. These are things that I have been fighting for the past 30 years, sentencing disparities, mandatory minimums, racial imbalance in juries, things like that. And I've had some reported cases. I've outlined a few of them in the materials. I think it's important to recognize that there are really 3 elements, at least this is just my semi-learned opinion, of actually effectuating change, because we all want these positive changes, but the question is, are we going to be sitting here 2 years from now saying the same thing? And the first thing, again, just my theory is you have to have a desire to change. And I think every candidate has that this year, from what I've seen. You need to want, you recognize the issues, you want the change to happen. The second is you have to know how to do it. And that comes from nothing short of experience. Again, I've been dealing with this for 30 years. And the third, quite frankly, is you need to be respected enough and experienced enough that you can effectuate that change in what's really a closed system, which is the court system. Anybody, who has been maybe practicing a couple of years and strolls into the administrative judge's office of criminal division and says, hey, I've got a great idea about bail reform. They're going to say, well, who are you to tell me how to run the courts? See, if I walk in there, I serve on the Judicial Administration Committee of the Pennsylvania Bar Association. We are working on these issues, actively as we speak. I've been around, I know what works, I know what doesn't work, and I know how to get things done because I can speak with that authority that'll actually do it in a judge's meeting. Is that my 30-second warning?
No, that's your time expired.
Oh, man. Wow.
All righty,
Oh,
then let's
cut
get
the
to the
short
first
of it.
question, Mark. Would you like to
Sure.
share your Allegheny County Bar Association rating with us?
Yes, I'm recommended by the Bar Association.
Terrific. And what have you learned outside the law practice that you think will help you as a judge?
Well, I think one of the biggest elements, it's not just knowledge of the law, it's how people operate, how people think. And that can come from having just represented so many clients over the years, many of whom are in these exact positions of the people that we want to help, disadvantaged people, people of color. But even outside of that, I'm very active in the community. You can see from my questionnaire, I coach hockey since I have too many concussions to continue playing, and at my age, that's not a great idea. And just dealing with the kids, dealing with the parents, because there's so much more, even in coaching sports, than just showing them the game. I mean, it's giving life skills. And the reason that serves you well on the bench is that you really need to know where people are coming from. So much of the law revolves around what somebody thinks is reasonable, not my version of reasonable, but their version of reasonable. We need to get inside their heads, know where they're coming from. For example, on the South Side, in some areas, it's perfectly reasonable to throw a chair out in front of your house and defend it as if it's the Battle of Midway to get a parking space. And in my neighborhood, I'd be arrested for doing that. So, you really have to sort of, I hate to use the phrase, take your victim as you find it. But, once you have that broad basis over such a long period of time of knowing where people are coming from, that gives you a great advantage in court.
What division of the court would you prefer to serve on and why?
Well, be honest with you, I am an authority in criminal law, of course. I've actually written 2 books and I've got a third on the way in that area. But I also practice family law and commercial litigation. So I think the natural progression would be criminal division, but I'd be perfectly comfortable in adult family division as well as supervision.
Great, thank you. Mac, how are we for time?
10 seconds.
Want to do the Supreme Court Justice?
Sure, it's got to be RBG just because I met her once. We sort of had half a cup of coffee together. My great uncle was a judge for the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals down there. That introduced me many, many years ago.
How exciting. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, Mark.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Our next candidate is Brian Flaherty.
It seems that we have no Flahertys showing up today.
No Flahertys. All righty. Then we'll move to candidate Brenna Watson.
All right. I needed to turn on her camera before I could spotlight her.
Okay.
There we go.
Thank you. Hello, Brenna. Welcome.
Myself. There you go. Hi, how's everybody? God bless y'all.
Good.
Do I just begin?
Yes, you're up to bat. Tell us why you want to be a judge.
Okay, all right. I want to be a judge because I didn't want to be a judge my whole life. As my classmates used to tell me, Rena, you should be a judge. Your dad's a judge, your brother's a judge. I said, no, I don't want to be a judge. I just want to be a lawyer and help people. But in my trek in my career, I was assigned the duties of sitting as a judge. In my very first job outside of the court system, I was assigned to be a Section 8 hearing officer for the housing authority. I was lauded by one of the Jackie Grayson. She's was a neighborhood legal services attorney, and she said, "Brenda Watson's the savior of the housing authority." And I said, "No, I'm nobody's savior." Absolutely. However, I do try to help people stay in their homes and not be kicked out, and try to work with people. I enjoyed that and went on. I was offered a job as the mental health hearing officer, which I've been doing for 26 years. And when I started doing that, I realized that, hey, I really enjoy adjudicating cases, and which made me seek out being a Pittsburgh City magistrate. And it was there that I discovered, when I sat out and looked at like 300 people on what we affectionately called Friday afternoon zoo in city court, and the attorneys are trying to pull the wool over your heads. There's a multitude of defendants and witnesses and police milling around. And I looked out, and believe me, it's a heavy caseload there. And I looked out and I said, wow, I love my job. And I did. And so, it was then that I realized not only did I love what I was doing, but also I was good at it. I am good at it. I'm very fair to people. I treat people with respect ultimately, and I decide cases well. And I listen. When people have been in my courtroom, somebody loses, but when they've been in my courtroom, they at least feel like, you know what, she listened. And before she made a decision, and she didn't just summarily make a decision without giving it much thought to what's being presented. So those are the reasons I decided I like being a judge. I want to be a judge, and we need it. We need fairness, we need diversity, we need all the things that I've been doing for 26 years from the bench. We need those things on the bench now.
Okay, Brenda, can you share with us, have you applied to the Allegheny County Bar Association for a recommendation? Could you share with us your recommendation?
Yes, I am. I'm in the process of applying. I applied many, years ago, and I received a recommended rating, which says that you're highly qualified. But those, after I think 5 years, those are stale. So my prior recommendation is stale, and I am in the process of applying again.
Terrific. As a common pleas court judge, you'll preside over jury trials. Describe how you'll prepare for jury trials and what will be your most important considerations.
Well, my dad was a judge for 40 years. He retired at the age of 80. I had the opportunity to work with him both as tip staff and law clerk. So I sat in the courtroom with him. I sat in the chambers with him. One of the things that my dad did every time there was a trial was prepare. So, whether it was the day before or a couple days before, he reviewed what cases were coming in. If there was law that was required to be on top of the case law, he had that. He knew that. He also so preparation is key, and to every case that you're going to do. Preparing for a jury case is, in fact, to me, no real different than preparing for any other case, other than the fact that you have to read up perhaps on the jury, the questions that you may give to the jury, and be aware of what you can do. Be very aware of the reasons that a person can eliminate persons from the jury. I would love to see jury reform. I think that we clearly need to have a better means of getting more people of color into juries. I've been in juries and in jury rooms, and you look and there's like, oh, there aren't very many to pick from. And then you have those challenges, and you can knock them off for no reason. So I think that that's not a fair situation. As a judge, you don't get to really make that decision. That's a legislative decision. But I think that we can, go to the legislature, be on a committee, make those recommendations, and get those changes made. We need some differences.
What steps did you take? Where are we, Matt?
We're close to the end. I'm sorry, I forgot to give a 30-second on that one.
All righty. I would like to know what is your favorite U.S. Supreme Court justice or judicial role model?
Thurgood Marshall. Actually, Thurgood Marshall, I am just enamored with him and the fact that he was the first Black Supreme Court justice, but also he went to Howard University School of Law. I'm a Howard undergrad. My mother's a Howard grad. My brother's a Howard Law grad. My whole family, except my dad, who's a double duker, went to Howard University. So I have much respect for him. He was also a very, very dear friend of my birth mother's first husband. And so there's a connection there. I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg as well. I love the fact that she fought tirelessly for women's issues and made changes.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us today, Rena. Our next candidate is Judge Bruce Beamer. Thank you. Bruce, take away.
Hi. How is everybody? Thanks so much for having me. I am Bruce Beamer. I am currently sitting as a judge on the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. Was appointed by Governor Wolf back in December of 2019 and unanimously confirmed by the Senate. I was the first judge in almost 15 years to be sent directly to the criminal division, either elected or appointed, and that is currently where I am sitting now. And in March of last year was assigned probably one of the most difficult trial dockets that exists over in the criminal division, which is our sex offender court docket. It involves all charges involving allegations of physical or sexual abuse against minors. They're very difficult cases, involve many jury trials and very difficult issues of evidence and law that I have to deal with on a regular basis. I think the fact that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court approved that along with our president judge speaks a little bit to the level of experience that they felt that I brought to the bench. I've held some very high positions in our state government, including the 49th Attorney General of Pennsylvania and as Governor Wolf's Inspector General of Pennsylvania. Both of those instances, I was asked to take on very difficult assignments, including as Attorney General of Pennsylvania, helping to restore honor and integrity to that office's front office following a scandal. And I think what's really interesting about that is that it was hundreds of employees that actually went to members of the Senate asking them to support my nomination for that position because I had worked there, worked with those individuals. As Inspector General of Pennsylvania for 3 years, I helped root out waste, fraud, and abuse in the executive branch agencies of government. And it was Governor Wolf entrusting me with a job where I had to use a phrase that was used earlier, speak truth to power in difficult situations and identify problematic areas. I've had a long history as a trial lawyer. I tried over 125 jury trials, both as a criminal defense attorney, as a criminal prosecutor, and in the civil arena, where in civil arena, I focused almost exclusively on protecting people who were victims of environmental crime.
30 seconds.
And I really believe that the work that I'm doing on the criminal division speaks to a lot of the criminal justice reforms that we all really want to see happen. And I know that one thing, if I was fortunate enough to be elected, I would probably still be in that division and want to work with all of you as partners to talk about the ways that we can move things forward. Thank you.
Great. Would you like to share with us your Allegheny County bar rating?
Sure. In December of last year, I was rated highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Judge Beamer, what have you learned outside the practice of law that helps you as a judge or informs your decision-making as a judge?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that in my career that I've been able to do is really work with and deal with people. I was fortunate enough when I was Attorney General and Inspector General to supervise well over 1,000 people. And one of the things that I think I was able to do is learn how to make real connections with individuals. That's what you have to do in a courtroom, is to treat. One of the problems with our system is that we do not treat people as individuals, and we do not look at circumstances like where they came from, what may have led them to these issues. I spent time with all of my people that I worked with, getting to know them, learning about them. It's that sort of empathy and compassion that I think really translates very well to the bench. We've seen in the last year and a half, some of the problems that we have with judges that have no empathy, have no compassion. It leads to very, very bad results. And so I think my ability to work with large groups of people and understand where each individual is coming from will be very beneficial to me moving forward.
Are there times the common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice for the parties before them?
I think there's an obligation on the part of a common pleas judge to follow the law, but there are certainly times where common pleas judges have to look at something and say, there is not a clear precedent here as to what should be done, and must be willing to stretch things where they think the law can reasonably go to protect the rights of individuals. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that in circumstances where it is not clear that the appellate courts have spoken on a matter. I've seen it already several times in my time on the bench where I've had to look at decisions where it was unclear and you have to step up.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Judge Beamer. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Thurgood Marshall, by the way.
Okay, well, thanks. Thanks for slipping it in there. Okay, our next candidate is G. Clinton Kelly. Mr. Kelly?
Hi, my name is Clint Kelly. I'm 57 years old. I am married to my wife Cindy for 30 years. We have 3 sons ranging in ages from 28 down to 23. I got licensed to practice law in 1988 after graduating from Case Western Reserve Law School in 1988. In 1991, I opened my own law practice here in Pittsburgh. And since that time, I have practiced in all 4 divisions of the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. The primary focus of my practice has been in the area of plaintiff's personal injury litigation, which these cases are heard in the civil division. Now, over that time, I have tried over 60 cases to verdict. I have handled, in addition to that, I've handled 5 complex FINRA commercial arbitration cases. And I have prosecuted 6 soldiers through the Army Reserve Judge Advocate General's Corps for violation of the Army's drug policy. I don't have statistics on the numbers of cases that I have had that have settled on the courthouse steps in lieu of going to trial, although there have been plenty of those over the years. I don't have statistics on the numbers of court appearances that I have had on motions and arguments and conciliations and all these things, although there have been plenty of those as well over the years. I don't advertise on my law to grow my law practice. I grow my law practice through referrals from other attorneys, and I cultivate those referral relationships by teaching continuing legal education seminars through the CAPE education program. I've written over 25 course materials, and I have done over 75 seminars over the years. Now, along the way, I got very interested in mediation and arbitration. I became certified as a mediator, and I began mediating cases through the Court of Common Pleas Civil Division Landlord-Tenant Mediation Program. I serve regularly as an arbitrator through the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas Civil Division Arbitration Program. And when the coronavirus court shutdowns began to occur, I was asked to serve on an ad hoc committee by the Civil Division of Allegheny County to design a remote arbitration program so that arbitration cases could continue to be heard remotely through either Microsoft Teams or in some instances Zoom. And then since that time, I have been chairing arbitration panels through this remote venue. It's been that single experience that has caused me to want to continue to be involved and to seek election now as judge of the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I'm grateful to participate today and to be considered for endorsement by your committee. So thank you very much.
Great. Can you share with us your Allegheny County bar rating and where you are in the application process?
I'm in the application process. I haven't applied yet. I got late. I was late to get into this race. I didn't get in until February 9th. I know that my deadline to apply is March 26th, and it's in process.
Okay, perfect. As a judge, how would you as a judge, what steps would you take to remove financial barriers to justice being done?
As a judge,
Yeah.
I would want to make sure that everybody who is a pro se litigant has a voice in court. That's something that I have noticed over the years that I get I'm very concerned about. You know, on one hand, pro se litigants seem as though they don't have access and they rely on the court for help. In other instances, the court seems to bend more towards helping them than perhaps they should. So it's a very fine line on how you treat the pro se litigant. I would do what I can to make sure that everybody is heard and that they are heard in a respectful manner.
What's the most important thing you've learned in mediation that will help you serve as a judge?
I believe the most important thing that I've learned in mediation is to give everybody a voice, give them the opportunity to fully explain their position, and then to look for common ground between the instances and the positions, points of view that the parties have. If you can find that common ground, you can find a resolution. If you find a resolution, then you can help avoid further problems down the road. I think that's a big benefit to mediation.
What division of the court would you prefer to serve in and why?
30 seconds.
Well, I'd go anywhere they put me and I'd be grateful for that. But I would prefer to be in the civil division because that's where most of my work has been. And I think I could do the best job there.
Terrific. Mac, where are we for time?
15 seconds.
15 seconds. You want to do the Supreme Court justice that you're influenced by?
Sure, I get on the Ruth Bader Ginsburg bandwagon, but
Ruth is carrying the day.
I loved the movie, not the doc. I like the documentary, but I loved the movie, and the way she stood up and kept on going was great.
Well, thank you for being with us today. Again, miraculously, we're a little ahead of time, so we're going to keep plowing forward with candidates. And up next is Judge Elliot Housey.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Judge Elliot Housey, and it's good to see you all. I had the privilege, I ran 2 times before, 2017, 2019, and I had the privilege of being nominated by Senator Jay Costa, appointed by Governor Wolf, and unanimously confirmed by the Pennsylvania Senate to fill a vacant seat on the Court of Common Pleas. And since that time, I've been assigned to the Family Division. That was 2019. But you know, throughout my travels on the campaign trail, having been there before, I routinely hear people say that judicial races don't matter. You know, these judge races, they're just not very sexy. I don't ever plan to be in front of a judge or appear in court. So these races really don't matter and they won't affect my day-to-day. But I'll tell you what, they do matter. And they matter to the countless people that appear before me in family court, unable to pay the $20,000 in litigation fees that it will take to litigate their divorce. And when you talk about the expenses associated with a divorce, and you talk about alimony, dividing assets, dividing pensions, the only people who really benefit in that conflict and in that space are the attorneys. And then the children suffer because the litigants don't have the money to continue to litigate their custody rights. So it matters. It definitely matters. And it matters to those people that can't afford to pay for attorneys or advance their causes. But at some point I was called by the president judge, Kim Clark, and administrative judge from criminal division, Jill Rangos, and I was asked to come over to the criminal division due to a number of shortages that we had in that division. And I was assigned to the Phoenix court docket, which was the busiest docket in our criminal division. And I gladly, took that opportunity. But the one thing I insisted upon doing was continuing to work on my family court cases. I didn't want those families to have uncertainty, unnecessary delay, waiting for a new judge to get assigned to the case and get up to speed. So I insisted upon keeping those cases. And I'm still working in the family division now while also doing the criminal cases on a daily basis. But the one thing I frequently tell this story. There was a gentleman who was arrested. He was charged with an offense, and although he had worked his entire life, he had only been in minimal scrapes with the court system, nothing serious. But he was unable to post his $500 bail. And due to his inability to post that $500 bail, he sat in jail for a period of 7 to 8 months, waiting for his case to work its way through the court system. And at the end of that process, when his case got to the Court of Common Pleas, the Commonwealth evaluated that case and determined that they did not have adequate evidence to support the charges, and they told him that they were withdrawing the charges and he was free to go. And his response was, free to go where? My job is gone, my car is gone, my house is gone, my wife has left me, my life is in complete disarray. And unfortunately, these are the decisions that are being made in our court system on a daily basis. Lives are being destroyed. And this is just one example. But it is because of my life experience, growing up in a low-income community, understanding the issues that plague those communities, understanding the issues that routinely bring people to the front door of our court system. It is because of my work experience, working as a prosecutor, working as a defense attorney, the director of the public defender's office, working in the social service field, my work ethic, working 2 full-time jobs while attending full-time.
Thank you, Judge Hudgy. It's time to move to questions.
Okay.
Can you share with us your Allegheny County bar rating?
Yes, I've been twice rated highly recommended.
Judge Housey, how are you using restorative justice measures when you're working on the bench?
So it is such an important topic, such an important discussion to have. When we talk about the court system and the impact that it has on people's lives, lives are being destroyed. So one of the things that I do is I am very intentional and deliberate when imposing sentences. I do not give out lengthy periods of probation for low-level misdemeanors because it does nothing but ensure that a person will end up back in our jail system due to a technical violation of that probation. And if you look at our jail population, more than 50% of it consists of people that are there for probation violations. So we look at sentencing, we look at fines and court costs, and we look at alternatives to sentencing. We have to give people the tools to rebuild their lives after becoming involved with our court system. And I do that every day.
Are there times a common pleas judge should stretch beyond established law to do justice for parties before them, and when?
Absolutely, whenever possible, because for instance, some people have very lengthy criminal records from 20 years ago when they were younger and they were involved in some inappropriate behaviors, and they have a record to show that behavior. 20 years later, they get in trouble for a minor misstep. That record will be the information that the court relies on to impose a sentence. And if you do that, you can find yourself in some instances sending a person to prison for 2 to 4 years for stealing a candy bar. That's not justice. It wastes resources. It destroys lives. In that instance, I think as a judge, we have to utilize our discretion, fashion a sentence that will allow that person to pay their debt to society, but then move on after having done so. I think we have to step away from the law to do justice.
What division of the court do you prefer to serve on, and why?
I think they are all extremely important, but if I end up in orphans court or civil court, it will be over protest. And it will be because I fought and lost. I believe the work that we need to do begins in family division and the criminal division. We can't reform our court system over in civil division, orphans courts. No disrespect or nothing disparaging to say about those divisions, but the work that I'm passionate about and committed to doing has to occur in family division and criminal division.
Thank you, Judge Housey, for being with us. Thank you very much. Our next candidate today is Jessel Costa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jessel Costa, and again, I'm one of the candidates seeking one of the 9 open spots in the Court of Common Pleas. In my professional career, I have served as a public defender. I've been a deputy attorney general, presiding over the child predator section in over 20 different counties in Western Pennsylvania, and I've practiced in private practice. All of this, working on both sides of a trial, coupled with my work on every aspect of a case, from the investigatory stage through a jury trial verdict, demonstrates that I have a holistic and comprehensive understanding of the legal system. Furthermore, my work in over 20 different counties throughout Western Pennsylvania has imbued me with a broad base of experience as it relates to how the court system functions. I've seen, frankly, what does work and what doesn't work, and I want to bring those best practices back to Allegheny County. Finally, in a year like this, when we have 9 open seats, I'm aware that we have a historic opportunity to change. And I'm one of the candidates, I believe, that has a solid set of ideas for implementation, specifically in the criminal division, that would start to affect that positive change. First and foremost, while we're all aware that magisterial district justices set bail in Allegheny County, Common pleas judges need to more quickly review those bail decisions because not every magisterial district judge in Allegheny County is making correct decisions about bail. They are, like I said, on the front lines of eliminating cash bail as a function. However, we need to have mandatory bail hearings in the Court of Common Pleas within about 1 week of an individual's preliminary hearing. Here's why. Because those individuals that Judge Housey just talked about, languishing away in jail on a $500 bond for months and months and months. If you have a mandatory bail review hearing within 7 days of an individual's preliminary hearing, that means the longest they will sit in jail for inability to pay a bond would be 7 days. And that is not acceptable to leave individuals languishing away in jail pre-trial for longer than they'll ever serve on a sentence for these low-level nonviolent offenses. The second thing we need to do is expand our program courts, our diversionary courts. These are things that we've talked about, like mental health court, veterans court, Phoenix court. All of these programs are in the restorative justice mold. And what they do is they center rehabilitation over incarceration. They provide a pathway for litigants to go forward, commit community service, perform restitution where necessary, pay fines, fees, and costs, and oftentimes end the program without a criminal record and without having spent time in jail. Finally, we need to stop giving out the longest sentences of probation of anywhere in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and some of the longest nationally. They just set people up to fail.
Terrific. Can you please share with us the Allegheny County Bar Association process that you're going through and if you've been rated?
I have not yet been rated. I am applying for the next batch of ratings. I believe the 25th or the 26th of this month is the deadline, but that's where I am in the process.
Thank you. Could you describe your practice before the Court of Common Pleas, your experience?
Yes, so I have been a assistant public defender. There I worked in the pretrial division, and I worked in the trial division, and I worked in the Phoenix court division there as soon as I graduated law school. After that, I went to I served as a deputy attorney general in the Office of Attorney General, where I supervised the child predator section in Western Pennsylvania, some 26 or 27 counties. I worked there for about 6 years. Now I practice at the firm of Adesano and Romano. It's a private firm. I handle mostly PCRA cases, criminal court appointments, and some civil matters representing usually small businesses or individuals.
Thank you. Can you describe for us what restorative justice measures mean to you as a judge?
Well, frankly, the restorative justice measures are what I think should be the default of interaction for folks with the Allegheny County court system. The three ideas that I touched upon, I believe, are ideas within the mold of restorative justice. My point is simply that our court systems don't work for the individuals interacting with the system. They work for the lawyers, they work for the judges, they work for the law enforcement, they work for everybody but the litigants. Restorative justice makes sure that that is not the case. We institute programs and procedures whereby everybody gets equal access, equal opportunity, and equal justice. I believe that the three programs or changes that I've mentioned are a part of that, but there needs to be much more.
Okay, Supreme Court Justice, who's your favorite?
I'd say Ruth Bader Ginsburg, first Jewish American, second female attorney, Supreme Court Justice, and just a fighter, a tireless fighter for the rights of those of us on the left side of the spectrum, especially as the court began to shift over the years.
Thank you so much. We are at our stretch break. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Costa.
Thank
so
you
it's
all.
4 o'clock and we're going to resume at 4:05. And thank you all for hanging in there. We have consistently had between 70 and 80 people on this call, and I applaud your determination. Thank you. See you at 4:05. Jane will take over.
Rolling.
Welcome back, everyone. Our next candidate is Rosemary Crawford.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you so much. During this revolutionary era where people have literally rioted in the street because of their desire for real justice, there's an opportunity for real transformative change and the election of 9 solid candidates on the Court of Common Pleas. As a Black woman who is culturally competent, I will use my 31 years of trial experience and quasi-judicial experience, my public service, and my fight against racism and discrimination to actually help to move the court forward. I think it's so important in terms of access to justice and equality of justice. I'll also use my program experience to increase pro se courts, diversionary courts, and also increase mediation. I'm a certified mediator as well as a certified arbitrator. I've worked, and I think it's important to start programs to provide free attorneys to people in Allegheny County. I started the 100 Lawyers program when I was at the YWCA Greater Pittsburgh, and I got that accredited and trained the attorneys to do 1 free case, and we were able to serve people who had no other access. Also, I believe that with access to justice, telephonic hearings, Zoom hearings will help those people who are working class people who may have problems getting downtown. Parking's very expensive, and having to take a day off work will help. In many court systems, those type of hearings are successfully done, and a way to handle minor hearings such as status reports and things of that nature. I personally would be happy to serve in any court, but I would prefer to be in juvenile or the criminal division. I think it's so important to see that these children have actual fairness. We should be not putting children and people for minor offenses in part of the institutionalized system instead of in the community. We can use our resources. I believe that requiring bail for anything but the most heinous offenses is unfair. It's patently unfair because a person should not be criminalized because of poverty. We have too much of that currently going on in the system. And oftentimes we see that the police unfortunately do not exercise due diligence when it comes to poor and minorities. And it's up to the judge to listen as soon as possible to find justice for those individuals. In my 31 years as an attorney, I graduated from Georgetown Law School, and I have a broad variety of experience. I've served as a prosecutor, I've served as juvenile conflict counsel representing children, I've served in the poor doing PFAs, protection of abuse orders on a volunteer basis. I've served on the boards of Neighborhood Legal Services and Pennsylvania Legal Services to provide reduced fee and free programming to those who are in need. I think, yes.
Rosemary, thank you very much. Could you provide the rating from the County Bar Association Judicial Committee?
I am in the process of seeking a rating. In the past, I was highly recommended, but that rating has expired.
Okay. And could you describe more specifically your practice before the Court of Common Pleas?
Sure. I've done everything from jury trials, bench trials, every Friday happy hours, different programs. I've worked for many years as a trial attorney in various law firms. So I've done pretty much everything there is in the courts. I've done also, as well as common pleas, I've done appellate work in the Commonwealth Court and other courts, Superior Court, and a lot of federal court work. So I would say pretty much I've done everything there is in the Court of Common Pleas. Juvenile representation for a number of years, as I said, is representing the children in that family division, the PFAs, civil trials, as well. My work as a prosecutor was in a different court in DC, but I've been in Pittsburgh since I believe 94.
Okay. And if elected, what division would you prefer?
I would prefer juvenile because I think at this point, or criminal, restorative justice and judicial reform, those are the courts where you need a compassionate person who's culturally competent like myself, who's trained people on cultural competence. When I was at the YWCA, we taught it to different corporations and the community. I think right now in this time in particular, it's imperative, and we've got to get judges in who really understand the bias that privilege has and who can look over that. And with the children, we want to have successful children and adults. We do not want to continue criminalizing our community. And we want judges who understand programming, who will work outside the courts as well, to look at issues of trauma, food insecurity, housing insecurity, things of that nature, such as I do now working with WIND Girls and other organizations, so that we can have successful, I heard a beep, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's time's up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Rosemary. We very much appreciate it. Our next candidate is Matthew Rogers. Hello, Matthew.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Matt Rogers. Obviously, I am running for Court of Common Pleas along with everyone else. I'm a candidate endorsed by Emily Kincaid and the Steel City Stonewall Democrats. I live in Mount Lebanon with my wife and 14-month-old, and I am a family law attorney, and that's really why I'm running. The sort of peek behind the curtain in the court system is that when elected, the majority of the new judges are appointed to the family division. And what tends to happen there is you have new judges that have never practiced in that division. And the reason there are always vacancies there is because most people don't really have much interest in being there. I mean, it's difficult dealing with people's divorces, their custody situations, protection from abuse orders, and the like on a day-to-day basis. So it's an unpopular place to be. And what sets me apart, I think, from a lot of the other candidates is I actually I want to be there. It's what I do. It's what I've done for my entire career. And I also want to stay there. One of the difficult issues the family division deals with is that aforementioned high rate of turnover, right? So new judge comes in, stays for 18 months or 3 years or whatever it is, and then there's a vacancy in the civil or criminal division, and they take that opportunity to move on to something that's maybe more in their wheelhouse or less highly emotionally charged on a daily basis. And we joke about it as attorneys, right? Oh, ha, like what new judge do we have to, train in family law this time whenever another election cycle comes through? But the tough part is really for the families that are dealing with the court system, because a civil case may last 2 years. You file a complaint, you litigate it, or you settle it, and everybody goes home and they never interact with the court again. But a custody case, for example, can last 18 years. And that family could see 2, 3, 5 judges in that time period. And not only is that frustrating that they have to re-explain their entire life to a new person, but they also have to pay their lawyer, if they're represented, 5 times to re-explain, their case. So what I really want to do, my passion, my goal here is to provide some continuity to the family division. Go there, stay there. I could have a trial tomorrow. I know the law, I know the lawyers, I know the rules, and also try to serve these families through one of the most difficult things they're probably ever dealing with for the long haul. So.
A few questions, Matthew. Have you sought a rating from the Allegheny County Bar Association?
I have. My interview is Monday, so that should come soon.
And do you have any thoughts of how financial barriers might be removed to further justice?
Yeah, so we deal with that a lot, a significant amount, and maybe even more so in terms of representation in the family court, because in civil court, those attorneys can take cases on a contingency basis, so no money is due up front. Criminal court, you're provided counsel because your civil liberties are threatened. But in family court, you're not guaranteed any sort of representation in any case. There are some limited programs that are available, the Divorce Law Project, for example, but it's very limited, and the income threshold to qualify for those programs is so low that it's wonderful that those programs exist, but they absolutely need expanded, and they need larger budget, and they need to include more people, because these cases can go on for a very long period of time, and you're dealing with something like people's relationships with their children, and there's nothing in place for custody cases, for example.
And as a common pleas judge in the family division, how would you prepare for such cases?
I mean, like I said, I've been a family law attorney for essentially my entire career. Early in my career, I was a judicial law clerk, and we had
3 seconds.
The entire duration of my term, for about 2.5 years, we had at least part of the family law docket. So I got to see quite a bit about how to appropriately address litigants, pro se litigants, and establish a good relationship with the attorneys and the parties that are currently going through the litigation of their divorce or their custody case.
Time's expired.
I'm sorry, is there any back? Is time up?
That was time up, yep.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, Matthew.
Thank
Our
you.
Our next candidate is Chuck Porter. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
We are good, thank you.
So I'm Chuck Porter. I am a firm believer that experience is very important. I've been a trial lawyer for 35.5 years. I started as an assistant district attorney. I served about 2 years there. After my second daughter was born, I decided I needed to go into private practice. I primarily have practiced in the criminal division for the last 33.5 years. I've been named in the best lawyers in America since 2006 in criminal defense. I've also been named in super lawyers. You won't find me, as an aside, if you look online in the best lawyers, because I don't buy their advertisements. So I'm only in the book version rather than the digital. In addition to practicing criminal law for 33.5 years, I've also practiced in the civil division. I practiced in the family division at times. I've practiced in the orphans court in the past. Most recently, my civil practice has involved representing the district attorney's office when they get sued. So there's one day I am actually fighting with that office, and the next day I'm representing them. So I have to build walls with regularity. I also represent police officers who get in trouble. And I think that shows that I am the type of person that is respected on both sides of the aisle. The defense lawyers have great respect for me. The prosecutors do. The police do. And I think that is a very important factor when one is considering who should be a judge. I've also served as judicial law clerk for 3 different common police court judges for about 30 years of my practice. I started with Judge David Sircone until he became a federal district judge. About a year later, Judge David Cashman asked me to be his law clerk, and later I was Judge Paul Luddy. So I've clerked in both the civil and criminal divisions. I've also been on the zoning board of my community in Shaler for over 20 years, where I've been essentially making quasi-judicial decisions as a 3-member board over that time period. I have probably the greatest breadth and wealth of experience of any of the candidates. I think I'm uniquely suited for this job. And I think my temperament, my demeanor, my respect by all the parties basically establishes that I would be a very good candidate for this job. And I look at it as this is sort of the, you've had a practice, you've served as a lawyer, and then at the end of your career, you do something back for the system by becoming a judge. I don't intend to serve 30, 40 years as a judge. I would be a judge for a term and perhaps a few more years. I think that's how it should be, quite frankly.
Thank you. And have you been before the Allegheny County Judiciary Committee as yet?
I have. I used to be a member of that committee. I've been involved in various committees. I'm recommended, just to cut to the chase. I've been involved in various Bar Association committees, the Judiciary Committee, the Nominating Committee, the Criminal Litigation, I was past chair, the Federal Criminal Practice Subcommittee, I was past co-chair along with Tom Farrell at one point in time. I've also done court appointments in both state and federal practice over I was at state court appointments until I became a clerk and I couldn't do state court appointments. And then in 1990, I think it was, Tom White, who was the federal defender, asked me if I would get on the CJA panel. And I was one of 3 lawyers, along with Tom Farrow and Caroline Roberto, who oversaw who got court appointments for many, many years. So I still take federal court appointments. I believe it's important to give to the system by doing essentially pro bono work.
Okay, what's our timeline, Matt?
Got a minute and a half.
Okay, what does restorative justice mean to you, Mr. Porter?
Well, I think restorative justice, as I understand the concept, is an attempt at bringing the defendants, the accused, and the victims essentially together in some fashion to try to heal any wounds, if you will. And while I think it's certainly an important concept in some cases, I also think that we need to be vigilant that we don't over-victimize a victim in those situations. While, you know, certain crime types, I think it's important and I think it can work. I think we have, it's something, I think most things you have to judiciously do. You just can't, you know, carte blanche do anything. You know, the same, you know, people are talking about bail and probation, and you know, you have to weigh these things based on your experience and what you've seen over doing this. There are cases I think it can work, but I don't think it's something that you can do in every case.
And your most revered U.S. Supreme Court justice?
I would say, going back in time, it would probably either be Justice Harlan or John Paul Stevens. They were justices who weren't afraid to go against the grain, against the mainstream when they felt the Constitution or the circumstances required. And I think that's an important concept. Judges have to follow the law, but there are times when they have to do what they think is right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Porter.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Our next candidate is Pauline Calabrese. I'm sorry, Calabrese.
Thank you so much. It's Calabrese. It rhymes with common pleas. It is so good to see so many of my friends and people I know on here. I have practiced in all 4 divisions. I have been a trial attorney. I've done criminal trials. I've done civil trials. I am a trial attorney. I have varied experience as well. I certainly never say that I have replaced her. I simply say I am her successor. A very, very great woman, Barbara Daly Danko. I have had the distinct honor to serve in her place at CCAC. So I say I succeeded her. I have taught employment discrimination law as an adjunct at Carleton University. I practice primarily in family division right now. And although we are not permitted to say we have a specialty, my niche is with the LGBTQIA community. Back when I first started practicing, my office was located on Liberty Avenue by the PNC Bank near Shadyside Hospital. Fortunately, our language has changed, but back then we had a large LGBT community because of our location. Back then, the only place that I know of that was doing what we called back then was sex change operations. We fortunately changed those terms. And so that became my niche. I had a client one day who came in an hour and a half early, and I didn't even realize that he was my client because he was so early. I left the office around 11:30 for lunch, and I got back at about 1 o'clock. And this gentleman, as I was walking through, he caught my eye. He was so handsome, he was impeccably dressed, but I didn't catch his eye. And that was for 2 reasons. First of all, I simply wasn't his type. And secondly, he was in the throes of grief. His partner was in Shadyside Hospital, and the family of the partner refused to let him in there. He then passed, and this gentleman came into our office to get what we call custody of the body. To this day, this is the most heartbreaking case. People ask me about practicing family law. My saddest case is not a custody case, it was that case. We told him we could not file a petition for him. There was nothing we could do. Back then, we were doing things that today just sound downright silly, like we were doing adult adoption so people could share names. We then came up with sort of a package that we would do to create rights for people that didn't have family rights. And to this day, we still do them. We were doing medical directives, wills, powers of attorney, deeds, those sorts of things. In fact, my first Zoom when COVID hit, I was a little afraid. I was afraid, what am I going to do in the courtroom? I've been practicing law for 30 years. I'm used to walking around the courtroom. My first Zoom trial was bio-mom. The court requests us to say bio-mom and oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, a few questions. Have you gone before the Allegheny County Bar Association Judiciary Committee for a rating?
No, I'm in the process.
Okay, all right. And how would you move barriers, financial barriers to further justice?
First of all, I'm very proud to say that I won the Pro Bono Legal Excellence Award in 2018. I'm very much committed to pro bono work. I have served the National Council of Jewish Women and the Jewish Women Foundation created the Center for Women. Years ago, I became a volunteer attorney. I just think that, not that I'm not the only attorney that thinks it, but certainly we have an obligation to do pro bono work. And it's very gratifying to me to do that work. So I personally do that work. In addition to that, one of the issues that I'm very, very passionate about is, for example, in Allegheny County, children are being deprived the company of their parents because it costs close to $400 to file a custody complaint. If you don't have that money and you can't file that action, your child does not get to see you. I think we need to stop funding, using fees to fund. That's just, I think we need to look at how we fund these actions. I think we need to do things in all of the divisions that we do in family division. I'm very proud of the family division bar. We have I am a volunteer attorney for Neighborhood Legal Services. They offer us the opportunity to sign up to be pro bono attorneys. And, I've been doing that for 30
seconds.
I graduated in 1988. So basically for my entire career.
And your most respected U.S. Supreme Court justice?
Well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, my goodness, not only what she has done for us as a society, but if I might speak to the other women on here, she is, someone who paved the road for people like me.
Well, thank you very much for your remarks. We appreciate it. Our
so
next candidate is Mick Pappas. Magistrate Pappas. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. The honor is all mine. My name is Judge Mick Pappas, and I am a candidate for the Court of Common Pleas. Currently, I serve as a magisterial district judge in the east end of the city of Pittsburgh, representing 8 neighborhoods. I sent a little bit about my background in a letter to the members of this body, along with 2 other candidates. The 3 of us have formed a judicial reform coalition. So I'm going to skip through a little bit of the information that was provided there and just begin by saying that for my 20-year career in community government and the law, I've been focused on one thing. There's one undercurrent there, which is protecting your rights, our rights, my rights from unfair systems and powerful interests that threaten them on a day-to-day basis. This is an essential function of a judge as well. One thing I really want to impress upon folks is that my candidacy from the time that I ran as a district judge candidate to now is part of something much bigger than me. It's part of a movement for systemic justice system reform. And so when I ask you to support my candidacy, I'm asking you to be a part of this movement that we all know very well is gaining momentum, gaining traction year by year, day by day. As a judge, I've been faithful to the law. I've exhibited temperament. I've exhibited work ethic. And I've taken an innovative approach because one thing that I believe very strongly is that judges are public servants. Judges are leaders. And we hear a lot about numbers during these elections. We hear about number of courtroom hours, number of years, member of the bar, things like that. I've presided over 1,000 bail matters, over 900 landlord-tenant matters, and we can talk about numbers, but the most important thing is what is in a person's heart. That is the most important thing that I would say it's one of the factors that you should strongly consider in addition to numbers as you're weighing your consideration. And just to give you a sense of where my heart's at, I'd like to tell you a very brief story. In matters big and small, I'm going to pay attention to every complexity of them. I was in traffic court one day, and a man came in and he seemed to be very agitated, very anxious. And I noticed that immediately because as a judge, one of the things that I'm required to do is maintain courtroom demeanor. So I'm wondering, what's his approach going to be when he gets called for his case? And sure enough, he comes up for his case, and I can tell you that his mood changed dramatically. As soon as he opened up his mouth to speak, he went from agitated and angry to crying. As soon as he opened up his mouth to speak, he couldn't say anything. It was just tears.
Time's expired.
And so what happened was he had just been released from prison, and he was having a payment determination hearing. He wanted to get his driver's license back. I saw his situation. I saw that he owed thousands of dollars to the court, and I knew the issues very well. We worked out an arrangement for him to use something that he was already doing, coaching a youth basketball team, to earn community service credit. And he went from anxious, angry, not knowing what to expect, to crying, to relieved. He left the courtroom that day feeling like justice was done, and that's not what he expected that day. And when thank you very much.
We need to move to questions, yes.
I'll take a very similar approach.
Thank you. Have you been before the County Bar Association's Judicial Committee?
I would like to say something about that. I am in the process. I'm going to be, I guess, the next batch of folks that they'll schedule. But may I just say, and I'll add on to that, that as a judge, I have to consider all of the factors before me. I can't ignore some evidence because I don't think it's the most important. I have to look at all of the evidence. And so what we're asking you to do in this new era is to consider all of the factors involved. I've been endorsed by leaders in the 14th Ward, including Councilwoman Strausberger and Director Harbin. I've been endorsed by movement organizations that are trying to end, that have gotten Brianna's Law on the ballot. I'm part of this Judicial Reform Coalition. And so I really hope that folks won't just defer to traditional gatekeepers when making this decision, because it's just too important of an election for that. And this group really exhibits that alternative approach, right? That is your founding mandate, is to be something that is a parallel to, an alternative to the traditional gatekeepers. So I will go through the process.
Thank you. And just a quick question, your most respected Supreme Court justice?
Justice Louis Brandeis. He was much like Justice Ginsburg in that his dissents later on became very powerful opinions. And he wrote one of the most cited law review articles in history, The Right to Privacy. His writings are incredible, and he was a tremendous justice.
What's our time like, Mac?
Well, we've got about 50 seconds left.
Oh, okay. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I know you've asked about restorative justice, and I would just say that the way that I've reduced evictions in our district by 40%, the way that I've reduced truancy convictions in our district by 40%, the way that I have eliminated cash bail and fines and fees in juvenile cases is by taking a restorative approach. What it means to me is consensus building. And only until you can no longer build consensus should a judge start to use the remedies available to them and decide.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your appearance.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all as well.
Our next candidate is Mr. Andrew
Zeffie.
I apologize.
Zeffie, that's right.
I think I butchered that. My apologies.
Well, you're not the first or the last, please don't worry. It's Andy Zeffie. Thank you all for having me, first of all, and thank you for hanging in there. You're just about at the end of the road here. I don't know whether to get you a coffee or a cocktail, but thank you.
We've had lots of coffee.
Coffee it is, for your dedication to this process and taking it so seriously. My name is Andy Zeffi, and I've been a lawyer for 22 years, courtroom experience that whole time. For the last 9, I've served as the county solicitor of Allegheny County, the chief legal officer for the county, and director of the law department. And in that role, I probably have, I think, probably maybe the widest breadth of experience of any candidate in this race. We have 45 lawyers that serve in every division of the Court of Common Pleas, save criminal. I've never been a prosecutor or a defense attorney. I've not practiced in the criminal world in any meaningful or extensive context, very small. But we practice in every other area. We handle the 6,500 county employees, the 5,000 unionized employees. We handle all the litigation against the county, defend it all, bring lawsuits where necessary, for example, against opioid manufacturers and distributors, all of the county's collective bargaining. We send 15 attorneys a day over to family court to represent our Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and represent the other departments such as Parks, Public Works, the jail, and try to get them, we like to say, try to get them to do the right thing in the right way. Try to get them to yes and enable them to do their jobs in a way that keeps them out of trouble. One of the departments I think is particularly germane to this election that I represent and have represented is our elections. As you all know, we just came through one. You might have heard about it. I was charged with developing the system by which those new mail-in ballots would be processed and counted, and to make sure they got counted. We had to develop that system for the very first time, never used before in a general election and in the primary. And we not only had to pull that off on election day under scrutiny like no other election has been under in this county, and then we defended it in every court in this state for months. We faced a relentless assault on our elections. At the end of the day, we won every one of those cases. We got every one of those votes counted that needed to be counted. The people's voices were heard. I tell people, I don't care who you voted for, that's your business. But what's important was that your voice got heard, your parents, your kids, your friends and neighbors, their voices got heard in that election. And so not only did we need lawyers who knew the law in court and knew how to go to court and get the results, but what was so important at every step of that process is that we had judges who knew the law. Okay, I'm talking about Trump, Obama, Bush appointees, you name it. And they reached the right decisions. What we're facing here in the Court of Common Pleas with 9 judges turning over and almost 200 years of experience is the need for judges to step in there on day one who have the experience, the time in court, to step in there on day one and do what they and do the job. We can't tuck 1 or 2 judges away in family court like they usually do while they learn. They're going to have to be deployed to every division, save perhaps orphans, which is a whole nother story. But we're gonna have to jump in with these judges on day one. I think I have the experience, the temperament to do that from day one. And so I'd humbly ask for your consideration as for one of your endorsements.
Thank you. And your rating by the Bar Association?
I have the highest recommendation from the Allegheny County Bar Association.
Thank you. And what have you learned outside of the practice of law that you think will help you as a judge?
Oh, in my role as county solicitor, not only do I practice law every day, I have to assess. I'm a peacemaker and a mediator in many contexts. Not only do I run an office of 55 people and 45 lawyers and herd those cats and try to bring consensus to disputes and conflicts, but I have to bring people together in the context of moving policies forward that are being advanced at the county level, and getting people to, often cooler heads prevail and see solutions where oftentimes people just see conflict. That's not a legal role that I play, but that is one that I have been asked many, many times to play to facilitate solutions. I think that's something we call on judges to do, and just a good judge will do in just about every case and wherever possible.
Thank you. And what does the term restorative justice mean to you?
It means to me sort of a process by which we, outside the traditional criminal justice context, where we bring the parties to a criminal action together, the accused and the victim, and try to reach a solution and an understanding outside of a criminal justice penalty or incarceration, whereby we find a different solution for that accused to make amends or find a solution with the victim of a crime. I think it can work in a great deal of context and should be tried more. We see it all the time. I represent the Allegheny County Jail as one of the departments in the county. Many of the lawsuits we resolve from inmates in the jail, we resolve through a process that greatly resembles that. For the most part, what you want is people you have is people who want to be heard, who have their experience heard and talk to the people that they were in that jail with, who they accuse of violating their rights. And through that process of listening, we've often resolved a lot of cases that don't have much to do with money, really, at the end of the day. So I've seen it work, and I think it can be used in a lot of cases.
Thank you.
That's expired.
I'm sorry, Mac, how much time?
That was 0. It ran out.
Okay, all right,
It
well,
was finished. It was perfectly done.
thank you so much. And is Dean Birdie with us?
Well, thank you guys for having me. You guys have a good afternoon.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
as
Zeppi.
well. Thank you.
It does not appear so, and checking, nor are any of the 3 people who we missed earlier. So I think we're out of candidates.
All right. Well,
Thank you very much.
I would like to thank you, Jane, and I would like to thank you. Mac, if you could give me the screen, that'd be great.
You should be there.
Great. Well, we'd like to thank you for your dedication and for hanging in there to listen to all the candidates today. It's incredibly inspiring that we've heard from so many smart, passionate people who care about the law and in particular public service. So couple reminders, voting will remain open tonight until 8:30 p.m. due to Shabbat. Reminder, if you are a voting eligible member of the club, you've been sent an email with a link in which that will direct you to OpaVote, where you will be able to vote. It will be open till 8:30. All the candidates, the top 9 candidates today, will be notified. We don't want the candidates to have to wait 24 hours to hear who the top 9 are. We do not release, they will be released in alphabetical order because we do not share the top vote gets. We've never done it that way. We want to remind you that we pick up tomorrow again at 1 p.m. You have the link. There are candidates tomorrow for the PA Commonwealth Court, Superior Court, the sheriff, the mayor. It's school board, city council, and 3 referendums that are going to be on the ballot. I'd like again to thank Liz and her committee. There's been a lot of coordination, and that's it. We hope to see you all back on tomorrow, and please go vote. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
I have a question.
Yes.
All right, I'm still not sure about the voting. I'm in the middle of doing something. I didn't know I had to vote tonight, so I'm gonna have to hurry up and vote. So do I go back to the original email? Will there be a special link or what?
Liz, you want to take it or
Sure.
Matt?
Martha, look in your email and you're going to get an email directly from OpaVote. So you'll see that's the name of the person sending it to you, OPA capital VOTE.
Okay,
And,
is it there now?
Yes, it was sent out
Okay.
there right about the beginning of the meeting, and you should
Oh.
see it in your email box. And
Okay.
when you open that email, then you can click on your ballot, and you have until 8:30 to complete it.
Right,
Some
got
people
it.
may want to go back and look at the questionnaires
Yes.
that we have posted on the website if you're still kind of mulling things over.
There are other questionnaires
Over.
available.
You can
Is
read,
there
you
a
know, if you're
link to
trying to,
that?
like,
Yes, Martha, there
yes,
is a
if you go to
link.
go to the,
Go ahead, Liz.
on the club homepage, when you
Yeah.
go to the homepage and start to scroll down, you'll see
Mm.
information about the process today. Then you'll see a big link that you can click on that says, see the candidates questionnaires. You can click on that.
Okay.
It'll take you to a page with all of them. So if it'll help you
Okay.
make up your mind. You can go there and read those.
Well, listen, you guys did an amazing job. I've been involved in the League of Women Voters for over 55 years. So, I'm used to running these things. I mean, you just kept it moving and it was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. very much.
Congratulations and thank you.
Yeah. Do people?
It's important.
Do the meeting runners want to stay on as other people drop off just to debrief?
Yeah, that'd be
There were a
great,
couple
Liz.
Other questions.
Questions from other people.
Okay. So we handled Martha. Who else has a question?
I'm Barbara Litt. I have a question. So I got here 20 minutes late and I know you're recording. Is it possible to watch the part I missed before I vote?
You have to speak to our 2 meeting runners. I think it's unlikely they're going to be able to
Ready in
download
time.
it all.
Yeah,
and,
I'll answer that. Yeah, Barbara,
Thank you.
it depends on when Zoom can make it available.
Right,
So I'm
okay.
going to check right as soon as we stop.
So I'll wait then. I'll make sure that I don't vote until the last minute.
Yeah, it usually
In
doesn't take
case.
too long.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. All right, thank you. So that would be on your, on the website as well?
The link, the link it'll probably be a YouTube link.
Great, thank you.
Since it'll be so long.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sharon Bernstein, I guess.
Sharon, you're muted.
I don't have a question.
You have
Thank
a
you.
question, Sharon?
Oh, okay.
No.
Your hand was up. Anybody else?
Zachary
Alrighty then.
Michaels.
We're
Zachary
dwindling.
Michaels. Zachary Michaels has his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, did somebody else? It sounded like you were calling on somebody else for a second.
No, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I'm not part of this organization, but I wanted to join because I wasn't aware of anything else that was going through all of the judicial candidates. So thank you very much. That's really examined part of the election
Sure, and if
process.
you're interested in becoming a member of the club, and
I
if
did-
you're interested in keeping up with things, you can become a member of the club. You can just go to the 14th Ward Independent Democratic Club website, and there's a place you can click on there to join. And that way you'll be kept abreast of all of the activities.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering, if it's going to be a similar process for tomorrow, where you released all of, where you have released questionnaires for the non-judicial candidates, and have the same kind of voting process.
We'll have
We
the same
don't
type of
have